Chapter 486. This is bad. A Miracle City Bear Man soldier ran in front of Nangong Yun in a panic. Elder sister Nangong Yun. The enemy has taken over the periphery. I can see it, this old lady isn't blind. Nangong Yun was standing on a high mountain. She could see the enemy's main camp in the distance. It was simply like a boundless sea. Damn, they've really invested quite a bit in attacking Miracle City. The mountain around Miracle City was now taken over by the Four Cities Army. Miracle City was using the inner mountain ridge as a base to defend. They had no choice but to give up the periphery like this because Miracle City had to shrink their defensive perimeter so they could gather more strength. Everyone was filled with fear. What should we do now? Nangong Yun's brows jumped up. What do you think we should do? Beat them up for me. It was true that the Four Cities Army couldn't be stopped, but this didn't mean that Miracle City would be taken advantage of. Although Miracle City didn't have a protective barrier that covered the entire city, there were several hundred green protectors that could support a small barrier. Meng Qingwu quickly took out the stock of the Miracle Commerce and the various source energy weapons, even the weapons that had been sold to the Great Summer Country's army. There were over 500 source energy cannons, over 30 strengthened source energy cannons, and tens of thousands of heavy firearms. The Miracle Commerce's foundation was all revealed. The tribes around Miracle City were all very loyal, not a single tribe betrayed them. These over 2 million locals all brought their families to Miracle City. The stronger youths took the initiative to participate in the battle, contributing quite a bit to Miracle City's defense. Dongfang Haoren was quickly called back. Even Arnold and the others were quickly called back. Even Meng Yingying and Dolores had to participate in the battle. Many experts of the Great Summer Country were sent over to help. Miracle City had gathered all the battle strength they could. This was definitely a life-or-death battle for Miracle City. Punk, punk. Two large sounds came from the western mountain range. Nangong Yun received Zero's voice on her cell phone. Attention, there are enemy troops trying to attack Miracle City from underground. Because they entered our minefield, they were stopped. Nangong Yun took out a scroll containing information about the enemy. This enemy map was a piece of leather-coated material. The second Miracle Smart Brain controlled the undead spiritual radar to detect the life signals in the Miracle Mountain range once per second. After processing the data, it would be sent to the central Smart Brain 0 and 0 would send the data to the frontline commander's hand. There were two frontline commanders. Nangong Yun was in charge of the southern line and Dongfang Haoren was in charge of the northern line. Each line was divided into several areas and each area had its own troops. Dolores was in charge of the rapid response and emergency forces, while Meng Yingying was in charge of dispatching airships and air forces, and Meng Qingwu was in charge of overseeing the overall situation. Idiot, you're courting death. Nangong Yun could clearly see several troops trying to launch a sneak attack. Miracle City had already expected the Spider Warriors to use this method, so they had stored source energy mines all around Miracle City. If these Spider Warriors approached the mines, it would be strange if they weren't blown up. Zero's voice sounded again. Attention! The enemy is approaching in a large scale. Their main target is the southwest direction. I have already fired the interceptor missiles. Commanders, please prepare for battle. Was it finally coming? Because the battlefield was too big, the naked eye couldn't see the entire situation. Nangong Yun tapped on the enemy's situation map a few times and the enemy's situation map immediately changed. From the life signal map, it suddenly turned into the Heaven's Eye airship's high-altitude reconnaissance map. Nangong Yun could clearly see that there was a large group of winged men charging in her direction. These fellows were very cunning. They were moving close to the mountain peaks, so the naked eye couldn't see them. There was no doubt that they were trying to catch Miracle City off guard. Nangong Yun gave a cold laugh. 9 o'clock, source energy cannons, fire. The 80 source energy cannons were aimed at the gap between the two mountain peaks. Although nothing appeared, they didn't care about that. They just followed the order and the cannons began to fire. The moment the source energy cannons fired, a large amount of figures appeared from behind the mountain like a dark cloud. The source energy cannons landed right on top of them, instantly catching the winged men off guard. A large amount of them were instantly killed, causing several hundred casualties. Nangong Yun broke out in laughter. These damn birdmen aren't staying in their nests and are actually following the green frog to their deaths. Let's let them see Miracle City's might. Cannons, guns, crossbows, and javelins. Miracle City's advanced source energy weapons worked with the locals' traditional crossbows and javelins. All kinds of lights kept blooming in the sky. The beautiful light was incomparably dazzling and the terrifying roar was deafening. The winged men's agile figures kept moving through the sky. After all, this was the elite army of a forest city and each winged man was a 1 in 100 expert. Their movement speed was just too fast, so most of Miracle City's attacks missed. All kinds of wind blades and flames kept flying at the Miracle City guards. The green protectors spread their arms and released protective barriers one after another, stopping the winged men from destroying the defensive line. At this time, a large group of green giants were like gorillas, charging over the mountain peaks. Each one of them was like a human diamond, daring to charge through the storm rifles with their flesh and blood. The orc knights on the ground turned into countless black streams as they charged through the valley. The battle between the two sides instantly reached its climax. Cao watched from the distance and couldn't help being shocked. He was very happy that he didn't attack Miracle City alone, otherwise with Battle Banner City's strength, even if they sent out their entire army, they wouldn't have been able to take Miracle City. Even if they did take Miracle City, Battle Banner City's army would have been wiped out, so the losses wouldn't be worth it. It was just like Kino said. In the end, it was all for the other forces. Miracle City's performance was just too unexpected. Miracle City didn't have a large protective barrier. These mountains to Miracle City were not a barrier at all, rather they would hinder their counterattack to a certain extent. Miracle City was a typical forest city, so its area was just too big. So, this battle couldn't be compared to a normal attack and defense battle. The defending side needed to guard a large area that was filled with holes. The attacking side could take advantage of the gaps and attack the other side's weak points from all directions. Miracle City was not only at a disadvantage from the beginning of the battle. In terms of military strength, Miracle City's army was mainly made up of trained berserkers, several tens of thousands of new soldiers, Green City's gnomes, and finally the local army. This kind of mixed army was not only uncoordinated, they weren't strong at all. The four cities' allied army was not the same. This army's main force was made up of the elites of the various cities. It was not something Miracle City could compare to. Miracle City that didn't have the right time, place, or people had blocked the wild attacks of the allied army. The source energy weapons filled the giant gap in battle strength. The city's dynamic intelligence system filled the holes in the city's defenses. It was because of this that Miracle City blocked the four cities' allied army, or at least blocked the first attack. Cao had been attacking for close to an hour, but he still couldn't break through Miracle City's defenses. The four cities' army was already in chaos, and if they kept fighting like this, they would lose more than they gained, so they immediately withdrew their troops. This was truly a bloody battle. The Wings race lost 20,000 men, the Green Giants lost 15,000 men, the Spider People lost 30,000 men, and the Orc Cavalry lost 25,000 men. A total of 90,000 people had died. Cao's face instantly turned livid. Although Miracle City's losses weren't small, this kind of loss far surpassed his expectations. The Wings race leader complained to Cao, "City Lord Cao, Miracle City is much stronger than we imagined. Our Wings race has lost over 20,000 men, but we can't even break through the other side's defenses. I dare bet that Miracle City's losses aren't as high as ours. Are you doubting this City Lord's abilities?" Cao gave a cold snort. Miracle City clearly has some kind of unknown detection ability. During the battle, I sent out at least 10 sneak attacks, but no matter which mountain valley they came from, they were all intercepted by Miracle City. As for the might of their weapons, you should have experienced it. Just tell me what to do. The Green Giant leader rudely cut him off. Our losses are this serious. The blood of our clansmen can't be spilled for nothing. Miracle City must be captured. No rush. City Lord Cao sat in his seat and said with a calm expression, "Today's battle wasn't smooth, but Miracle City's losses aren't small. Their weapons have been used up quite a bit and they rely on these weapons too much. We just need to gather large amounts of forest tribe warriors and gather them into an army of 1,000,000. We can attack from many directions and attract their firepower, reducing the pressure on us, and we can definitely break through Miracle City in one fell swoop. Everyone nodded. This was reasonable, they would do this. In the end of today's battle, although the 4 cities' armies were in chaos, Miracle City's firepower was clearly weaker. There was no doubt that for Miracle City, it was very hard for them to resist this kind of fierce attack, and it consumed quite a bit of their battle strength. When Nangong Yun returned to the city lord's castle, her head and face were covered in burn marks and her clothes were in tatters. On the battlefield today, the area she was in charge of was the focus of the attacks. Nangong Yun was a lunatic. Although the other side had experts like Clouds, she still charged forward without a care for her own safety. If it wasn't for the starlight immortal body and the great Nirvana scripture, she wouldn't have been able to survive even if she had 10 lives. Dongfang Haoren and the others also came back. They were all heavily injured and the situation was not good. Everyone reported their situation one by one. Although the defensive line had been defended, the price they had paid was too large. Dolores said with a frown, "The source energy mines in several minefields are almost gone. If we fight again, we won't be able to resist the other side's spider army." If they couldn't resist the spider army, the consequences would be serious. These fellows might even appear in the center of Miracle City. At the critical moment of the battle today, I used several Heaven's Punishment airships to reverse the situation. In the end, when we were halfway through throwing in the bombs, 5-6 bird people found the airships. Meng Yingying indignantly said, "Those bird people were at least at the Heaven Spirit realm and they were too fast. The airships couldn't escape in time and the Heaven's Punishment airships were all destroyed. There's also me." Nangong Yun slammed her fist on the table. "They destroyed 60% of the cannons here. I'm afraid we won't have enough firepower when we fight again. Elder Sister Qingwu, do we still have any cannons in stock? Give me another 100 to replenish them." "We don't have any." Meng Qingwu also felt a headache coming on. She shook her head with a sigh. "The cannons of the Great Summer Country's 4 states Lakes fleet have all been sent here. We have already used up all our strength and resources in this battle. There's no other way." Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. What should they do? Miracle City's defensive line had not been broken through, but their current defensive power had been greatly reduced. The second attack of the 4 cities' army would be even more fierce and Miracle City would not be able to resist with their current situation. Chapter 487. The Heaven's Eye airship overlooked the entire battlefield. The radar made it impossible for people to hide. No matter how fast Cao's army moved, they couldn't escape Meng Qingwu's grasp. Now that Cao's army had a large change, they should be preparing for an all-out attack. This meant that there would be an even more intense battle. Miracle City's greatest disadvantage was their lack of a city-protecting barrier, but their source energy weapons were their greatest advantage. Cao clearly wanted to spread out Miracle City's firepower, making it easier for the main force to enter Miracle City. His plan wasn't bad. Zero, analyze the situation. "Yes, Sir Vice City Lord." Zero's voice came from the speaker in the room before falling into a few seconds of silence. It was most likely he was running a supercomputer to complete a large calculation. The second smart brain has analyzed the data and the results are as follows. The number of enemies is between 800,000 and 900,000 and it is still increasing. The enemy has been deployed. The first south area has 50,000, the second area has 80,000, the third area. From the current situation, most of the life signals are moving to the south, but their life force is not high. It is a bluff. There are large amounts of strong life signals on the west side. Although there aren't as many as the south side, it is still the main force of the enemy. I suggest we deploy the heavy weapons to the west and use the ground troops and source energy weapons to block the south immediately. The most intense attack today was the southern defense line. Cao's main camp was also on the south side. According to normal logic, this was the main focus of the attack. Right now, Cao's army's deployment was a little off. They seem to have placed a small number of troops here. They seem to have a lot of troops, but in reality, it was just a bluff. The main force of the four-city coalition army had circled to the west side to launch an attack, crossing hundreds of miles. Did they want to catch Miracle City off guard? With the second Smart Brain's warning system, this kind of thing would never happen. After Meng Qingwu understood the situation, she still couldn't be optimistic. Can you analyze the success rate of the next attack based on the current weapons and army situation? Zero was silent for a few seconds before saying, I'm sorry, Vice City Lord. Because the battlefield is too big and there are too many variables, it already surpasses my calculations. Adding in the lack of data on the enemy, I can't give an accurate number. But if we use a rough calculation, I think it's less than 30%. Less than 30%? It wasn't just Meng Qingwu who knit her brows this time, the others all felt very serious. Where is the city lord now? Dongfang Haoren was a bit confused. In this kind of critical moment, wasn't it time for Chu Tian to show his usefulness? He should have a way. Meng Qingwu gets angry at the thought of Chu Tian. This bastard brought Vivian to the Eternal Forest, but the result was nothing and he even dragged Vivian down with him. Forget it, we can think of another way. Who knew that after Chu Tian came back, he had been hiding in the garden? No one knew what he was doing. Miracle City can't hold on, we have to call him out no matter what. Just wait, I'll call him. Meng Ying dialed Chu Tian's number and was about to reprimand Chu Tian. However, before she could open her mouth, Chu Tian said a lot of things first. What did you say? Wait a moment. Meng Ying put away the cell phone and looked at the others with a strange expression. Chu Tian is calling everyone to the garden. Miracle City was already in danger and Chu Tian was calling them to the garden? Meng Ying explained. Chu Tian is saying that Miracle City's predicament is about to be solved and the solution is in the garden. He wants us to quickly go and help. Nangong Yun called out, what about Miracle City? What if the enemy attacks again? Dongfang Haoren took the initiative to say, me and the great summer marquises have a good understanding of the source energy weapons, so we can temporarily defend the situation. Since the city lord is confident in solving the problem, we should ask everyone to quickly go. They could only do this. Chu Tian's way of thinking was something normal people couldn't understand, but they trusted Chu Tian and hoped that Chu Tian could do something shocking. Therefore, they gave the command to Dongfang Haoren and the other great summer marquises and they quickly ran to the miracle gardens. Chu Tian's spirit gathering array had a camouflage effect, so they couldn't see the situation inside from the outside. However, once they entered the barrier, it was like they had entered a different world. The spiritual energy in the garden was sealed and didn't leak, so it was a place filled with life energy. Now, it was enveloped by an incomparably vigorous life force. The entire garden was covered in a layer of faint green light. With every breath he took, he could feel pure life force pouring into his body. The life energy here was strong and pure, just like a giant energy field. Even if they were cut by a knife, the terrifying life energy would quickly heal the wound. Chu Tian was standing beside a six-pointed star array. This primitive spatial aura-gathering device had been in operation for several days. It was like a squeezer, squeezing out the primitive spatial aura from the space. Since it was in operation, it had squeezed out at least 100 spaces. Several dozen energy pillars had been completely used up. These energy pillars were refined from Oldman Small Town's new oil. It could keep Miracle City running for several months, but it had been used up in just a few days. We're about to succeed. We're about to succeed. Sisters, everyone put in a bit more effort. Lulu had led over 100 flower fairies to fight for several days. They looked very tired now, but they were very excited and happy. In the center of the flower fairies, there was a thing floating in the air. It was a bead-sized thing that was completely translucent green, releasing a bright light. The energy in the entire garden was released by this little thing. What is this? Nangong Yun stared at the glowing thing with wide eyes. Something that can release such a strong life energy, perhaps it is a supreme divine item. Miracle City has this kind of thing, how come I didn't know about it? Meng Qingwu knit her brows as she observed it for a minute. Large amounts of heavenly book memories appeared in her mind. The Tree of Life seed, this is a fully activated Tree of Life seed. The Tree Ants and Flower Fairies had asked Chu Tian to help awaken the seed, but the Flower Fairies were usually in charge of it, so even Meng Qingwu had never seen it before. The reason why Meng Qingwu could recognize it was mainly because of her special source spirit. Meng Qingwu's source spirit had countless ancient memories sealed in it. Only when she met the corresponding item would these memories awaken. Meng Qingwu finally understood what Chu Tian wanted to do. "Young Miss, Yinging, Nangong, what are you looking at?" Chu Tian pulled everyone into the array without any explanation. The Tree of Life has already been activated, now is the best time for it to germinate. We have to lock in the energy for the Flower Fairies, allowing it to display its greatest effect. This seed's growth is related to Miracle City's future, so whether it succeeds or fails, quickly come over. There was no time to slowly explain. Several people poured their spirit energy into the source energy array with Chu Tian's knowledge, releasing an energy barrier around them. After the energy the Flower Fairies poured into the seed was bounced off, it was reflected back when it hit the energy barrier. It would not disappear and would continue to be used. These over 100 Flower Fairies worked together with all their strength. The Tree of Life's seed absorbed more and more essence, and the light became brighter and brighter. The life energy it released was even more vigorous, but this life energy couldn't break through the little barrier Chu Tian had placed. It was completely sealed inside and it formed a glass barrier filled with green light. Chu Tian, Meng Qingwu, Meng Yinging, and Nangong Yun were all soaked in this ancient life energy. Although the energy was very strong, this energy did not harm their bodies and could even be absorbed by their bodies, increasing their cultivation bases. After all, this was an ancient Tree of Life seed. Even a seed could be considered a divine grade seed. Chu Tian could clearly feel his spirit energy growing. The surrounding energy was very rich, and if he absorbed it all into his body, it wouldn't be a problem for his cultivation to increase by several layers. However, Chu Tian quickly suppressed this thought. Although it was very tempting to have his cultivation increase by several levels in an instant, this power was crucial to nurturing the Tree of Life seed. If he absorbed too much, it might affect the seed's germination. His cultivation could increase at any time. The Tree of Life wouldn't appear again if he missed it. Just like that, time ticked by. At this time, the sounds of killing filled the sky outside Miracle City. Chao's army launched a wild storm of attacks at Miracle City. Miracle City's defensive firepower had clearly weakened by quite a bit. Not only did Chao's main army retain their battle strength, they also gathered large amounts of forest tribes. Under these waves of attacks, Miracle City was like a small boat struggling in a wild storm. Miracle City can't hold on much longer. Kill your way in and slaughter them all. The morale of the four cities' army was high and Miracle City's defenders were pushed back again and again. Cao revealed a cold smile. He understood that there was no suspense in this battle. Miracle City's destruction was already a foregone conclusion and the city was destined to turn to ashes. He made a hand signal to Kino and the other experts beside him. When they attacked Miracle City, they would immediately capture all of Miracle City's high-level members and researchers. As for resources, let these brainless fellows steal them. Just as Chao's plan was about to succeed, an unexpected situation occurred. There was a strong fluctuation in the center of Miracle City that spread several hundred miles in the blink of an eye. It was like the earth was breathing. The wind and clouds in the sky changed as lightning flashed and thunder roared. Several dozen bolts of lightning fell down. They suddenly fell in the center of Miracle City. The second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave. It experienced an entire 9 waves of divine lightning baptism. Finally, a vast pressure was released from the center of Miracle City, instantly covering a range of over 1,000 miles. What kind of powerful divine might and power was this? The forest that had been destroyed in the battle was instantly revived and new shoots came out. The wounds of the soldiers were instantly healed, making people feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. The impact of this power and the range it affected was not something normal people could understand. No matter who saw it, their minds would turn blank and there would only be one thought left. A spiritual god had appeared. That's right, only the birth of a spiritual god could have this kind of momentum. Whether it was the dragon palace in the depths of the Dragon's Ridge, the black dragon sleeping in countless crystals, or the titan standing on top of the giant's palace covered in lightning, or the savage highlands high above, or even the ruler hiding in the darkness underground, or the large characters in the Western Sea, they were all shocked by the movement in the center of the forest of chaos. After the great ancient era, why would this kind of power appear? Chapter 488. The thousands of years of peace in the eternal forest was completely broken. The elven singing stopped for the first time in thousands of years, and the millions of elves stopped creating art. They all left their little tree houses and gathered in front of the Elven King's palace. They were densely packed like an ocean, waiting for the news to be announced. The Elven King called for an emergency Elven Council. Whether it was the gentle Elven King or the serious Augusta, they all had serious expressions. Everyone, there is no need to doubt it, this is the power of the ancient tree of life. There was no difference between the ancient tree of life and an ancient spiritual god. After the great ancient era, this kind of divine object could not exist in this world. Although the elves, tree ants, and flower fairies had tried to make the ancient tree of life sprout seeds for tens of thousands of years, they did not have much hope. Who would have thought that the ancient tree of life would appear again? This had a very high meaning to the elves. The legends say that the wood elves were born under the protection of the ancient tree of life and had not gone extinct since the great ancient era. The ancient tree of life was not just the ancestor of the elves, it was the origin of the elven civilization and the source of the elves' power. The ancient tree of life's birth had a very large meaning to the elves. The tree ants and flower fairies chose to believe in Chu Tian. It seems like this was the right decision. The elven vice speaker Ulysses' face was filled with excitement and joy. This must be Chu Tian's masterpiece. This is too incredible, he actually did it. Augusta's long white fur trembled a few times. This was also a good thing done by that brat? What kind of divine object was the ancient tree of life? A despicable and despicable human, even if he had a bit of intelligence, how could he awaken this kind of divine object? The elven king Lancelot spoke. No matter what the reason is, I think it is fate that has reappeared. This is a large auspicious sign. Our race is destined to prosper once again. Only the ancient tree of life has appeared and the entire forest has been shaken. Those fellows should have felt it. We have to personally protect the ancient tree of life. Your Majesty is right, Ulysses said in an approving voice. Now that the ancient tree of life has appeared in Miracle City and Miracle City is in danger, we can't just sit back and do nothing. This. Augusta was as stubborn as a rock. The eternal forest can never participate in any disputes. This is the 10,000-year rule passed down by the elves. Do we have to abandon the law of the elves? This time, the elven king Lancelot clearly wasn't prepared to give in to Augusta. The elven laws were set down by the ancestors. The ancestors made the laws to regulate the lives of the elves. Now that the era is different, if we stubbornly hold onto the ancestral teachings, it will become a shackle to the elves. The ancient tree of life is the wood elves' faith. We can't abandon our faith and beliefs. That's right. The counselors of the Elven King's faction all stood up. These people all saw the golden opportunity of a lifetime. The elven code and etiquette had bound the elven race for tens of thousands of years. If they could take this opportunity to completely break it, the elven race would have a chance to rise again. No, this goes against the spirit of the elves' laws. Augusta was caught between a rock and a hard place. This matter is of great importance. We have to discuss it properly. After all, it's a master who wants to amend the code. This needs to be discussed by the parliament. There's no time, Sir Speaker. Ulysses stood up with a serious expression and said, "Every minute we delay now, Miracle City will be in more danger. Perhaps because we are late by a minute, the ancient tree of life will be destroyed. Perhaps because we are late by a minute, not only will the elves regret it for generations, we will become sinners for all eternity. Sir Speaker, do you want to be despised by your descendants and the elves forever?" That's right. Sir Speaker. We should make a move. The ancient tree of life is not normal, We can just rebuild it after the law is broken. I think even the ancestors will understand us. This time it wasn't just the reformist elves that wanted to move, even the traditional Elven Council members supported this. It was rare for the Elven Council to be united, but the Elven Council's leader was Augusta. If he didn't nod his head, the Elven Council couldn't make a decision. Sir Speaker has always emphasized that the elves are a civilized race and each elf has the right to make decisions. Let's see the will of the people now. The Elven King did not give Augusta any time to hesitate. The millions of elves in the forest raised their heads in anticipation. The Elven King appeared on the balcony of the castle at this time, and his voice spread through the entire eternal forest with the wind. Although it wasn't loud, it was like there was an invisible force that clearly appeared in the ears of each elf. I have a piece of good news for everyone. The ancient tree of life has been reborn. When this was said, the elves broke out in loud cheers. The ancient tree of life is the origin of the wood elves. It has an even brighter power than the well of eternity. The elves will become even more powerful under the protection of the ancient tree of life. The elves instantly fell into an uproar as they excitedly hugged and shouted. This was a historical moment for the elves. But the ancient tree of life is in danger now. It can be destroyed at any moment. The Elven King paused and the entire forest fell into chaos. The elves were all worried for the ancient tree of life. We are now faced with two choices. The first is to follow the rules of the ancestors and stay in the forest. This can avoid fighting and allow us to live in peace, but the ancient tree of life could be destroyed or taken away. The second is to change the laws and leave the forest. We will protect the ancient tree of life and the faith of the elves, fighting for a better era and future for the elves. However, we will also be drawn into the flames of war. There will be blood, sacrifices, deaths, and even more dangers. Now, as the citizens of the eternal forest, as someone who has bathed in the light of the well of eternity, please make a choice. As soon as the Elven King's voice fell, save the ancient tree. Save the ancient tree. Save the ancient tree. The entire eternal forest was filled with waves of voices. Each elf strongly expressed their wishes and each elf was filled with passion. The Elven King turned around. Chairman, I think as the Elven Council's chief and a staunch supporter of democracy, you should make a decision. I don't know if this decision is right or wrong. Augusta's face twitched a few times before he helplessly made a decision. He understood that the ancient tree of life could give the elves a stronger power, but it could also give the elves a strong enemy, causing the eternal forest to be embroiled in an unprecedented battle. The elves were naturally kind and did not like killing. Was this right or wrong? Was this a blessing or a curse? First, protect the ancient tree of life. We'll discuss other matters later. Alright. Then it's decided. After the chairman agreed, this matter was easy to handle. The Elven Council announced the news and the eternal forest was shaken once again. Each elf returned home and took out the longbows and swords they hadn't used in many years. They were all filled with fierce auras as they prepared to leave the forest to save Miracle City. What are you saying with this mess? Augusta saw that the elves were careless and shouting. It was destroying the elegance and civilization of a race. Although the eternal forest's elves are very strong, Miracle City is too far from here. We won't make it in time if we move like this. The Elven King thought about it. Go, call Vivian over. Vivian had been under house arrest for several days, but her haze had been swept away. Her brows were raised and her face was filled with joy. She came over in high spirits. Royal Father, do you see this? Big Brother Chu Tian did it. He really did it. He is the great benefactor of the elves. I said that he would have a way. Let's not talk about this for now. The Elven King shook his head. Miracle City is in danger. We have to go save them. Do you have more Miracle City scrolls? Vivian knit her brows. This scroll is made from an Eye of the Star fragment. There aren't many left in Miracle City. I only brought this one. Only one. I have a way. Vivian took out an Eye of the Star from her storage pocket. Although I don't know how to make a transport scroll, I can make a transport tower. This Eye of the Star was a cultivation technique that Big Brother Chu Tian left for me. Now we can just make a transport tower in the Eternal Forest, and everyone can directly go to Miracle City. How long do you need? At least 3 days? No, 3 days is too long. The Elven King held Vivian's transport scroll in his hand. If it's like this, I'll go first. Vivian's eyes lit up. Royal Father is personally going to Miracle City? That's great. With Royal Father personally making a move, there's nothing to fear from those shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Augusta was a bit worried. Your Majesty is the highest leader of the elves and the ruler of the Eternal Forest. If you personally get involved, perhaps it will alarm Dragon City, Titan City, and Beast King City. The elves are not prepared to directly clash with them. The Eternal Forest hadn't participated in a battle in thousands of years. There had to be a gradual process of adaptation. If we have to fight sooner or later, there is no need to be afraid. Sir Speaker doesn't need to worry. The Elven King gently flicked his finger and the scroll automatically opened, releasing spatial energy. Vivian, I'll leave the matter of building the transport tower to you. Please be assured, Royal Father. It was unknown just how happy Vivian was in her heart. Today's matter was a milestone for the elves, and what made Vivian very happy was that she could build a transport tower in the Eternal Forest without needing the permission of Big Sister Meng Qinggu or Big Brother Chu Tian. After all, this matter happened suddenly. Vivian also had her own selfish motives. She hoped that the Eternal Forest would become better and better. The construction of this transport tower was enough to have an immeasurable influence on the Eternal Forest. The Eternal Forest and Miracle City were destined to be closely linked. The elves' lives would become better and better. Chapter 489. The heaven and earth phenomenon from the ancient tree of life made the joint army pause for a moment, but under Cao's strong orders, the army quickly resumed their offensive. Miracle City's situation instantly fell into a dangerous situation. The Spider Race soldiers have already dug a path to Miracle City and are now directly attacking Miracle City. The Wings Race soldiers have already crossed the defensive line and are suppressing Miracle City from the air. The Green Giants and the Orc Cavalry are quickly infiltrating. Miracle City's defenses are already collapsing. This news filled Cao's mind with excitement. Even if Miracle City had risen in the last month or two, their foundation was still a bit lacking. No matter how they struggled, they couldn't block the combined attacks of the elites of the 4 cities. There was no chance of losing this battle, it was just a matter of time. Now that the mountains around Miracle City had been lost, the source energy weapons had been damaged, so they couldn't form an effective defense. The Spider Race came out from all over Miracle City, launching a sneak attack from inside Miracle City. The Wings Race came and went like the wind. With their powerful aerial superiority and flexibility, they were currently disrupting the Miracle City Army's formation, making the Miracle City Army lose sight of them, so there were more and more holes in their defenses. Finally, the Green Giant soldiers and the Orc Cavalry also charged in. The Green Giant's powerful physique could block the light source energy weapons, and the Orc Cavalry's mobility and destructive might were like sharp knives cutting through the defensive line. The defensive advantage of Miracle City's heavy weapons had been completely lost, so they could only engage in close combat with the enemy. The Barbarian Berserkers led the new recruits to resist the Hulks and the Orc Cavalry, while the Gnomes used bows and various spells to resist the Winged Race's attacks from the sky. The warriors of the large tribes couldn't get involved in this kind of battle between city armies. They were responsible for blocking the gaps and blocking the tribal warriors of Cao's army. Although both sides were in a chaotic battle and cannons and other heavy weapons couldn't be used, Miracle City still had over 100,000 source energy firearms. This could make up for the lack of battle power to a certain degree, temporarily blocking the attacks of the 4 cities' army. Cao looked at Miracle City fighting. Let's do it. When Cao, Kino, and several dozen Battle Banner City True Spirit Realm experts charged into Miracle City, a small Berserker team discovered them and immediately raised their storm rifles to shoot. These densely packed source energy bullets were very strong. Even if a true spirit expert was caught off guard by several storm rifles, they would still be injured. Courting death. Cao waved his hand and the Berserkers seemed to be weightless as they floated into the air. Every one of them had several abilities coiled around them like dragons. Their heads and limbs were pulled in 5 different directions at the same time, pulling them out from their bodies and killing them on the spot. Although the storm rifle's power was not weak, it was not easy to kill a spirit transformation expert. Cao grabbed a barbarian berserker's neck and lifted him up from the ground. "Where is your city, lord?" "Speak." The berserker had gone berserk and didn't know what fear was. Therefore, he didn't hesitate even if his life was hanging by a thread. He raised the source energy cannon in his left hand and shot it at Cao. Bang! The source energy cannonball hit Cao's protective spirit energy and it actually made him stagger. Cao angrily punched the barbarian berserker to pieces. "Search," Kino said to the people behind him. "Even if we have to turn Miracle City upside down, we have to find that person." All of these people possessed shocking strength, and everywhere they passed, they were clean and efficient as if they were crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and all those who resisted were beaten to the point of fleeing like rats. "There's news. They are all in the garden in the center of Miracle City." "Ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me." Cao's eyes turned red as he laughed. He led several dozen people and immediately began to move. "Let's go." Cao began a slaughter on the way. Miracle City was in chaos, with the spider warriors attacking from the inside and the winged race suppressing the sky. There were large amounts of green giants, orcs, and forest tribe warriors that attacked and plundered Miracle City from all directions. Cao's group was too small, so they couldn't encircle them. A small army couldn't stop them, so these people easily killed their way into the Miracle Gardens. The Miracle Gardens were filled with sacred herbs collected by Miracle Commerce. It was simply a giant treasure house. Even if these experts saw this scene, they couldn't help feeling shocked. They never thought Miracle City would actually be this rich. Although there were many resources in the Forest of Chaos, who didn't want to transplant these treasures so they could use them whenever they wanted? Although these heaven and earth treasures wouldn't rot like normal materials, once they were picked, they would quickly lose their vitality. This would cause the medicinal effects to weaken and finally their value would be greatly reduced. Was transplanting something easy? This kind of precious material was very harsh on the environment it grew in. Each sacred herb not only needed a high-level cultivation technique, it also needed a special environment and fertile soil. At least it was impossible to find such a large herb field in Battle Banner City. These heaven and earth treasures were very eye-catching, but what shocked Cao the most was not them. When Cao and the others looked at the center, they saw a small sapling that was around 3 feet tall. This sapling didn't seem special at first glance, but the sapling was covered in a pure green divine light. The entire garden was covered in this aura and power. It looked like it was 3 feet tall, but in fact, it gave off the feeling of a baby. It should have just been born. Every leaf was bright green, like the best gemstones and jade. If the patterns on the leaves were magnified thousands of times, one would see that they were all densely packed innate runes, and every single one of them contained the vitality of heaven and earth. Divine object. A divine object. Although Cao and the others didn't know the origin of this thing, they didn't even need to use their brains to feel that this little sapling had already surpassed the immortal grade realm. It was definitely a legendary divine object that couldn't be found on the continent, and it wasn't even a normal divine object. The eyes of the several dozen people couldn't move away from it at all. Was the heaven and earth phenomenon in Miracle City caused by this divine tree? The divine tree stood there. Although the entire garden was filled with treasures, it was dim and had no attraction at all. What was the origin of this divine tree? No matter where it came from, it wasn't important. Perhaps all the things in the garden added together couldn't compare to this divine tree's value. If they could get their hands on it, even if they couldn't use it, as long as they offered it to the Beast King, they wouldn't need to worry about obtaining large benefits. This is bad. There are bad people coming. The flower fairies had successfully grown the ancient tree of life, but they didn't even have time to be happy before they felt a killing intent and greedy aura. Although they were exhausted, they still quickly protected the tree of life. Perhaps there wouldn't be a second tree of life in this world. They had to protect the tree of life no matter what. Chu Tian, Meng Qingwu, Meng Yingying, and Nangong Yun, although the 4 of them looked a bit tired, they were in an unprecedentedly good state. Because they had absorbed the aura of the Tree of Life, their cultivations had clearly increased. Chu Tian had already reached the peak second awakened soul layer, the Meng Qingwu sisters had broken through to the second awakened soul layer, and Nangong Yun had directly reached the peak triple awakened soul layer. This was the result of them sealing their meridians, not absorbing the energy of the Tree of Life. City Lord Cao saw Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu in the distance. The two of them were wearing the City Lord's robes, and the expression on his face became even more fanatical. This truly is an unexpected harvest. Meng Yingying tightly clenched her fists as she shouted, "Humph, don't think that we're afraid of you. Do you see this tree? It is the ancient Tree of Life, comparable to an ancient spiritual god. Once it releases its might, you shrimps will be turned to ashes at any moment." Although she was bluffing and had a fierce appearance, Meng Yingying's threat was like a little white rabbit showing its claws to a big bad wolf. So it's the ancient Tree of Life? The ancient Tree of Life itself is not a killing object. City Lord Cao revealed a sinister smile, not to mention how much power can a newly born ancient Tree of Life produce. While they were talking, City Lord Cao released a red-hot spirit energy that was like a flood dragon coiling around his body. There was no doubt that his 8th true spirit layer cultivation was released. When that strong pressure came, it made it hard for people to breathe. Too strong. Even if the people here worked together, it would be hard to block a single attack. When Miracle City was still Green City, there were several spirit transformation experts. For example, the dead Green Religion Bishop, the undead Religion Lich, and the Druid Prophet Yoda. Yoda couldn't come back from the Great Zhou Dynasty. There was no one in Miracle City that could fight. Chu Tian quickly raised his hand and said, "Wait, perhaps we can discuss this." "Stall for time?" City Lord Cao said with a cold smile. "This is meaningless. Miracle City is doomed to fall. Even if the Eternal Forest sends reinforcements, they won't make it in time. If you cripple your own cultivation and follow this City Lord, I can guarantee you a lifetime of wealth." Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders. "You really don't know how to negotiate." "This isn't a negotiation." Cao gave a low roar and released all his strength. He didn't like wasting time, he would first cripple these people. But at this time, with a thought from Chu Tian, the 18 divine servants hiding nearby suddenly charged at Cao at the same time. Cao was a bit stunned, but this sneak attack had no value at all. Kino and the other experts weren't just decorations. Almost in an instant, the divine servants were sent flying like broken puppets. Cao's body was surrounded by a powerful energy as he instantly broke through the sound barrier, charging forward at a speed surpassing the speed of sound. The expressions of the Meng Qingwu sisters and Nangong Yun all fell. "This is bad." At this moment, Chu Tian's eyes narrowed. "You really think you can eat me?" Suddenly, dark clouds appeared in the air and large amounts of lightning flashed. An ancient and deep majestic aura descended onto the world. Chu Tian did not retreat in front of this strong opponent, rather he took the initiative to attack. Chapter 490. Meng Qingwu knit her brows. Did Chu Tian use his main source spirit again? Although this source spirit could increase Chu Tian's strength, there was a large risk in using this source spirit. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Chu Tian would not easily reveal his strength. Cao's hands reached out. Several dozen chains of energy fell onto Chu Tian's body like beams of light. This attack was strong enough to shatter the protective spirit energy of a normal spirit transformation cultivator. Even if Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun were outside the range of the attack, they could still feel the strong destructive might of the attack. "Be careful." The two of them wanted to warn him, but they didn't even have a chance. Several dozen attacks fell onto Chu Tian's body. Cao didn't want to kill Chu Tian, so he didn't directly attack him. When the several dozen chains of energy were about to hit Chu Tian's body, they all exploded and turned into millions of thin threads. Each thread was like a steel needle that stabbed at different acupuncture points and meridians in Chu Tian's body. "You want to destroy my meridians?" Chu Tian gave a cold laugh and his eyes turned black. It wasn't a normal black, but rather an extremely deep black, just like a black hole. When those thin threads of energy entered his body, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no sound at all. Cow's brows slightly knit as he released another chain of energy. This time it directly hit Chu Tian's body. Although a part of the energy was swallowed, Cow's strength was too strong and most of it still hit Chu Tian's body. In the end, it was bounced off by the starlight around Chu Tian's body. Chu Tian didn't even stop as he charged in front of him. The long sword turned into a black slash. Cow's body released several hundred chains of energy, easily bouncing off the sword filled with destructive might. His palms slammed into Chu Tian's chest at the same time. The starlight protecting Chu Tian's body was finally shattered and he was instantly sent flying dozens of feet away. While he was in the air, he was continuously whipped by Cow's energy chains. Finally, he fell to the ground, creating a large hole in the ground. Chu Tian was just in the peak 2nd True Spirit layer and Cow was an expert in the 8th True Spirit layer. The two of them had crossed 3 stages, an entire 6 layers of cultivation. This was not a difference that could be measured by any cultivation technique or skill. What made people dumbfounded was, Chu Tian exchanged a few moves with Cow and was forced back. Chu Tian flipped over and jumped up. At least 7 or 8 of his ribs were broken, and his 5 internal organs were not small injuries. His eyes turned green, and an exuberant vitality spread throughout his body, allowing his injuries to heal quickly. This source spirit is... Cow was in a bit of disbelief. Chu Tian had at least 8-9 different attributes and each one was very strong. What he was using right now was the power of life. Chu Tian's ability resonated with the ancient tree of life and the surrounding life energy was drawn in, gathering at an incredible speed. It allowed Chu Tian to recover in the blink of an eye, not leaving a single trace behind. Chu Tian relied on the innate life energy of his main source spirit and the life energy of the ancient tree of life. As long as he had a single breath, he could quickly recover. You truly have some unexpected methods. City Lord Cow was not a normal person. He suppressed the shock in his heart and his strength erupted once again, turning into hundreds of intertwining energy chains. It's a pity, I only want an obedient dog and not a dog that can turn into a hungry wolf at any moment. Fast. Too fast. City Lord Cow gathered the energy chains and wrapped them around his right arm. Then he broke through the sound barrier and turned into several shadows that surpassed the speed of sound. The mind's lamp divine sense was released. Chu Tian's eyes unknowingly turned golden. His divine sense was not weak and after being strengthened by his source spirit, it became several times stronger. His divine sense turned into countless spiritual thorns. Spiritual attacks ignored distance. Therefore this kind of attack was instantly released. City Lord Cow was just about to attack when he felt several dozen thorns stabbing into his brain, causing intense pain. His speed also slowed down. At this time, Chu Tian's golden eyes released another intense glow. Endless purgatory. The sky and earth suddenly collapsed, and his entire person fell into a bottomless abyss. The power condensed from his spirit covered all of his senses, and finally constructed a pitch-black underwater world of death. Cow felt like he was being dragged into several 100,000 meters of water. An unbelievable pressure came from all directions. He couldn't breathe or move. City Lord Cow felt a suffocating pressure. At this time, countless thumb-sized fish appeared around his body. These fellows were like the most ferocious piranhas smelling food. They all crazily charged at City Lord Cow, biting his blood, eating his flesh, and drinking his marrow. Scram! City Lord Cow loudly shouted. An air bubble appeared at the bottom of the water. The terrifying strength turned the wild, bloodthirsty little fish to ashes. But it was no use. City Lord Cow felt the pressure around him increase as more bloodthirsty piranhas appeared in the darkness. City Lord Cow shattered it once again. After repeating this 3-4 times, he was very tired and could no longer resist. Countless bloodthirsty piranhas charged forward. Cow's flesh was bitten to pieces and there were some fish that entered his stomach, eating his organs without restraint. Even his bones were bitten to pieces and his marrow was sucked dry. This kind of pain was worse than any torture in the world. Finally, City Lord Cow's body was completely eaten. City Lord Cow's consciousness did not disappear. After enduring this great pain, he suddenly regained his senses. Only his body had mysteriously split into two, and he was also pressed into the endless sea, unable to move. The feeling of suffocation and pressure was twice as strong as before, and there were countless bloodthirsty little fish surrounding his two bodies. Spiritual attack. The spiritual attack. City Lord Cao's will was very clear. He knew that he had fallen into a spiritual illusion. This kind of attack would not harm his body at all, but it could directly attack his mind. It was sinister and terrifying, making people tremble and unable to resist. Everything he saw and felt was a fake illusion, but he could not escape it. This pain and torture was fake, but it could destroy a person's spirit and will. However, just as the countless bloodthirsty fish were about to charge at him again, the heavy pressure in the surroundings instantly disappeared, and the two figures quickly merged into one. The ferocious fish in the surroundings all turned into shadows and disappeared. Cao suddenly returned to the real world. Chu Tian was knocked back several meters by a bolt of lightning, destroying quite a few precious herbs along the way. After Cao recovered, he prepared an attack in his hand and sent Chu Tian flying over 100 meters. Over 100 precious herbs were destroyed in this process. This lightning attack was sent out by Kino. The moment Cao was hit by the spiritual attack, he decisively attacked Chu Tian. Kino was also a spirit transformation expert with a cultivation in the 7th true spirit layer. This was enough to penetrate the starlight immortal body to injure Chu Tian. This is too much of a pity. Endless Purgatory was an incomparably strong spiritual attack because time flowed faster in the spiritual world than in the material world. Even if a normal expert was hit for an instant, Chu Tian would be able to kill them thousands of times in the illusion, completely shattering their spirit and turning them into a madman or vegetable. When he was chased by the Warhound's Kingdom's Malim on the prairies, Chu Tian had used this move. Although the difference in strength was too large, it still made Malim lose his battle strength. The current situation was even more complicated than before. The difference between Chu Tian and Cao's cultivation had already surpassed the difference between him and Malim. Not to mention that Cao's divine sense was not weak. It was already hard for Chu Tian to barely hit him, so he couldn't create a large difference in time. This caused the attack to be interrupted as soon as it started. Chu Tian flew back. The surrounding life energy wildly surged in, quickly healing his injuries. He flew through the air and steadily fell down, like he had never been hit at all. This truly is incredible spiritual energy. City Lord Cao praised, but his eyes were filled with rage. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Tian still had a use for him, perhaps he would have already killed him. What other moves do you have? Chu Tian's injuries could be healed with the ancient tree of life, but his divine sense could not be restored. Chu Tian felt his head turn dizzy. It seems like he really couldn't do it. If it was just Cao alone, Chu Tian could deal with him with his main source spirit, but the problem was that there were several experts here other than Cao. Big brother Chu Tian, will help you? Lulu and the flower fairies surrounded him as they sent out essence energy. This essence energy was more effective than any pill, quickly restoring Chu Tian's consumed spirit energy and divine sense. The flower fairies were truly versatile helpers. Cao had already lost his patience. Capture them alive and kill the rest. The Meng Qingwu sisters and Nangong Yun's hearts turned cold. They and Chu Tian had transport scrolls in their hands, so if they couldn't hold on, they could hide in the Great Summer Country or the Great Zhou Country. But what about these flower fairies? The flower fairies did not have any battle strength. They would definitely be killed by Cao. Move! Cao's aura erupted once again. Meng Qingwu decisively said, Yingying, quickly take Lulu and the others and leave this place. Meng Yingying did not even have time to move before Cao, Kino, and the others charged over. Chu Tian quickly controlled the recovered 18 divine servants and quickly surrounded them. Overestimating yourself. The 18 divine servants were sent flying like broken dolls again. Chu Tian blocked Cao's attack first, but he was hit by Kino's lightning bolt. With 4-5 experts attacking him, he was instantly heavily injured. Don't let him recover, cripple him. Cao gathered his strength in his right arm and punched at his dantian. If this attack landed on Chu Tian, it would most likely scatter most of Chu Tian's cultivation. This is bad. This was a very dangerous moment. A green vine drilled out of the ground, and it was like a green python as thick as an arm. It quickly and anxiously wrapped around Kao's arm. How profound was Kao's cultivation? Not to mention a trivial little vine. Even if it was 10 chains made of refined steel, they wouldn't be able to bind him. But now it was just a small vine that could stop Kao's attack without any effort. Chu Tian used his spatial energy to jump out 100 meters, returning to the young Miss and Yingying's side. Nangong Yun quickly asked, "Boss, are you all right?" "Relax, I'm very good." Chu Tian was filled with life energy and all his injuries were instantly healed. When his source spirit slowly came back, "No need to worry, Miracle City has already been defended." "What did you say?" Cao split the vine with a palm and looked up with a serious expression. "Which expert is this? You actually ruined this city lord's good matter." Chapter 491. City Lord Cao's cultivation and strength were enough to be ranked among the top experts in the Forest of Chaos. Otherwise, how could he become a city lord? With this kind of strength, he was attacked by the enemy without him noticing at all. From the other side's attack to when it landed, Cao did not notice anything. In other words, if the other side wanted to take his life, it was very likely they would have succeeded. The other side did not do this, so why was that? He either had no motive to kill Cao or he felt that killing Cao was as easy as turning his hand. So, this was not a good time for him and he did not need to waste any effort to grasp it. When everyone looked over, there was a figure that had appeared in the garden at an unknown time. This was a middle-aged elf who looked gentle and refined. His face was impeccably handsome even among the elves. There was not the slightest energy fluctuation coming from his body. He looked just like an ordinary person. He was wearing a green robe and a simple crown on his head. There was a long scepter in his right hand and a silver-white cloak dancing in the wind behind him. A legendary name appeared in the minds of Chu Tian's group. The Elven King Lancelot. There were few people in the Eternal Forest that had seen the Elven King's true appearance, so of course Chu Tian's group hadn't seen him before. However, from Vivian's description of her father, they could tell that this person was Lancelot. The power the Elven King used came from the scepter in his hand. This scepter was called the Forest Scepter, and it was said that it was made from a branch of the ancient Tree of Life. It had an unfathomable might, and there was not a second person in the Forest of Chaos qualified to use this weapon. The first feeling the Elven King gave people was not that of a king. Rather, he was like a well-read scholar or a very charming wandering poet. City Lord Cao still could not determine the other side's identity, but like a wild beast that smelled danger, the veins on his forehead tightened, making his face look fierce. His pupils slightly shrank, revealing not killing intent, but rather nervousness. This was like a hunter who was fully focused on attacking, but suddenly had a piece of red-hot charcoal stuffed in his crotch, and yet he couldn't cry out. The Elven King was like a smooth and calm jade sculpture. His scepter, which was simple and unadorned, was inserted into the ground. Although it did not emit any energy waves, everyone could clearly feel that the entire garden had become the domain of this expert. His power could erupt anywhere at any time. "Retreat, I won't kill you." The Elf King opened his mouth and spoke. There was no sense of threat. Instead, it was more like a sincere plea or consolation to an old friend. City Lord Cao's eyes were focused on Chu Tian, but his divine sense and spiritual sense were looking at the Elven King. Chu Tian and the others had already become bystanders. At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly froze. It was as if time had stopped flowing in the garden. There was only one person who recognized the Elven King's identity, and that was Kino behind Cao. Kino was not a person of Battle Banner City and had wandered the Forest of Chaos in his early years. He had dealt with the elves before, so he had some understanding of the Elven King and recognized the legendary life scepter. Kino broke out in a cold sweat and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Even the slightest extra movement would bring disaster to himself. The Elven King said he was willing to let them go, and these people were relieved of a heavy burden. Although they didn't know why the Elven King would appear here. Since the Elven King had appeared, there was no meaning in fighting here. When Kino was thinking of how to tell Cao and make Cao retreat, who would have thought that at this time, something Kino never thought would happen? Roar! Cao broke through the sound barrier and turned into several figures, charging at Chu Tian's group at the same time. They didn't know who this elf was, but it was most likely related to the Eternal Forest and was most likely here for the Divine Tree. There was no way to obtain the Divine Tree. But they had to capture these people at the very least. Otherwise, what meaning was there in this battle? How could Cao be willing? When the Elven King saw this, he gently stabbed the forest scepter a few inches deep into the ground. A vast power spread out from the ground and countless green wooden vines drilled out. They easily bound Cao, who was moving at supersonic speed, and lifted him into the air. Several dozen vines shot out. Like piercing through a piece of paper, they instantly pierced through Cao's body. Cao revealed a look of disbelief. "You? If you kill me, His Majesty the Beast King will not let you go." The Elven King gave a soft sigh. Lancelot will take responsibility for this." Lancelot. When Cao heard this name, his mind turned blank and his eyes opened wide like a dead fish. He finally knew why he was completely defeated. It was the Elven King? Dying in his hands, it wasn't an injustice. With a tearing sound, the Orc City Lord was torn to pieces. Even someone as strong as Cao, in front of the Elven King, he was no different from a little bug. He was so weak that he couldn't even take a single blow. We didn't know it was His Majesty the Elven King. Kino's head was covered in sweat as he quickly bowed. "We'll leave now, we'll retreat now." The Elven King gave a faint nod. It was like they had been granted amnesty as they immediately ran away without even thinking about it. Nangong Yun shouted in a dissatisfied voice, "Are we letting them go like this?" Although the other side was the Elven King, Nangong Yun was very familiar with Vivian, so she didn't feel any pressure seeing her father. These fellows caused a mess in Miracle City. Wasn't it too easy to let them go like this? Of course. This was already the best result for Miracle City. Although the Elven King was strong, it was impossible for him to fight against over 1,000,000 people by himself. Every minute this battle lasted, Miracle City would suffer even more damage. The Elven King killing Cao was just a deterrent. After all, with Cao's death, the highest leader of the 4 cities' army was gone. If Kino brought the news back, these people would definitely choose to retreat. The prestige of the Elven King was indeed useful. The news of Kino bringing the news of Cao's death and ordering the Battle Banner City army to retreat quickly spread. The armies of the various cities also knew of the Elven King's arrival and immediately rushed to join the evacuation team. The Elven King was one of the strongest people in the Forest of Chaos. His appearance meant that the Eternal Forest was interfering. Who knew how many experts the Eternal Forest had sent, and for them to reach the level of the Eternal Forest, this kind of battle was not something they could handle. "Your Majesty Lancelot, I never thought that you would personally come." The Flower Fairies happily surrounded him. The Flower Fairies had a good relationship with the elves, so Lulu and the others had the chance to see the Elven King in their endless lives. The Elven King Lancelot walked in front of the Tree of Life and looked at the 3-foot-tall divine tree with a shocked gaze. "This is the ancient Tree of Life? I never thought that it would actually succeed." "Your Majesty, this is all thanks to Chu Tian." The Flower Fairy Lulu said, "If it wasn't for Chu Tian's method of activating the seed, we wouldn't have been able to make it sprout no matter how much effort we put in." The Elven King swept his eyes over Chu Tian's group. Meng Qingwu and Meng Yingying were a bit nervous. The Elven King was the ruler of the Eternal Forest, the strongest existence among the elves and one of the most influential experts in the Forest of Chaos. Even if it was Meng Qingwu, it would be hard for her to maintain a calm attitude when facing this kind of person. "What you did this time was too risky. If I came a bit later, even if you could escape, the Tree of Life would have suffered a mishap." The Elven King looked at the ancient Tree of Life again. "This tree's matter has already attracted the attention of many people, so I suggest moving it to the Eternal Forest. This way, it will be easier for the Eternal Forest to irrigate it with the sun's well water, and it will also be protected by the Eternal Forest's barrier." Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders and said, "Your Majesty the Elven King might not know, but once the Tree of Life sprout, its roots will connect to the spirit veins in the surrounding 1,000 miles, becoming one with the earth. Moving it in this kind of situation would be very risky." "That's right. Your Majesty the Elven King. Lulu and the others immediately came out to testify. Once the ancient Tree of Life is planted, it can't be moved easily. Not to mention that the Tree of Life seed has been sleeping for countless years. Although it has been awakened with great difficulty, it is still in a very weak state. If it is dug out now, it will definitely be killed. If it was just Chu Tian's words, the Elven King would be skeptical. This fellow was very sly. Who knew if he was deliberately mystifying things? But now that even the flower fairies said this, he had no choice but to believe it. The flower fairies were the best gardeners on the continent, and the flower fairies were pure and kind. It was impossible for them to lie to the Elven King. The Elven King knit his brows. This is troublesome. No matter what, many thanks to the Elven King for saving us. Chu Tian cupped his hands to the Elven King. Only Miracle City is in a mess right now. We need to clean up the mess, so forgive me for not being able to receive you. After saying this, Chu Tian did not wait for the Elven King to say anything as he immediately left with his eyes. Miracle City had experienced the largest calamity since it was built. It was impossible to estimate the current losses. The damage within the city was still acceptable, but the situation on the outskirts was not optimistic. The native tribes had suffered heavy losses, and many factories had been destroyed. Meng Qingwu did a simple calculation. This battle had caused damage, casualties, losses, and looted resources for Miracle City. These direct losses reached around 100,000 source stones. Other than the direct damage and looted resources, they had to comfort the injured citizens, give compensation to the tribes that suffered heavy losses, and also heavily reward the soldiers that killed the enemy. This would greatly increase the already tight financial burden. It's fine if it was just like this. Dolores had a depressed look. Miracle Bank will reduce the interest of the tribes by half and also take care of the repairs. We won't earn anything from this loan and will instead suffer a large loss. Anyone would be depressed if this matter was placed on them. Miracle Bank's business model was stable profit, but that was under normal circumstances. If there was a natural disaster, there was a possibility of losing money. Don't worry, there will be many difficulties in the future, but it will pass. Chu Tian maintained an optimistic attitude. After this battle, Miracle City's reputation will rise and our development in the center of the Forest of Chaos will be even smoother. Is that so? I hope so. Miracle City really couldn't take this anymore. Meng Qingwu tightly knit her brows. She thought that Chu Tian was too optimistic. The 4 cities had been defeated by Miracle City. This matter would indeed increase Miracle City's reputation in the center of the Forest of Chaos. But what about further places? Miracle City had already attracted the attention of a large power like the Eternal Forest. Could their future development be peaceful? Chapter 492. Quickly move it. We have many soldiers that are injured and need to be treated. These medicines need to be sent to everyone as soon as possible. How are the canned food preparations going? If there is any stock, send a batch over from the Great Summer Country. We need to ensure the food of our soldiers. Several hundred employees placed boxes of supplies onto the airships under Meng Yingying's orders. After filling 5 airships, Meng Yingying boarded one with Chu Tian. They rose up from the warehouse and slowly headed for the front lines. When they arrived in front of the airship's window, Meng Yingying could clearly see that the originally beautiful Miracle City was now filled with smoke. Large pieces of the mountain had collapsed and large pieces of the forest had been burned. In just a few short days, Miracle City had turned into a scene of devastation. War was truly a demon. Miracle City had lost over 40,000 soldiers and over 70 to 80,000 were injured, but they had fewer casualties than the attackers. The main reason was that Miracle City had deployed large amounts of source energy weapons to defend, and they had ended the battle at a critical moment when the battle was about to fall into a dangerous situation. If the battle had dragged on for another day, the casualties would have increased by several times. Meng Yingying was a bit sad. Our Miracle City has good mountains and rivers, but now many places have been destroyed beyond recognition. Chu Tian gently hugged her shoulder. Don't be sad. Miracle City has the ancient Tree of Life. I believe that with the power of the Tree of Life, it is very easy to repair the mountains and forests. Meng Yingying nodded in a gratified manner. Warriors of Miracle City. The enemy has been completely defeated. Miracle City has obtained a complete victory. City Lord Chu Tian and the Production Minister Meng Yingying have personally come to congratulate everyone, preparing food and medicine for everyone. Please be assured, your sacrifice for Miracle City will not be in vain. Every drop of blood you shed for Miracle City will make Miracle City more prosperous and protect your future generations. Every warrior that fights for Miracle City will be forever remembered by Miracle City. A few transport airships had yet to land, but their loudspeakers were blaring. When these citizens and soldiers heard this, they couldn't help cheering. This victory was too incredible. This was the fruit of victory that belonged to every Miracle City member. The 5 airships slowly landed. Under the personal command of Chu Tian and Meng Yingying, the boxes of canned food and potions were carried out and delivered to the citizens and soldiers. At this time, the call for mobilization sounded from all over the city. Meng Qingwu personally gave a speech, first praising the victory before she sent out a call for mobilization. The surrounding tribes had suffered heavy losses in the battle, so they needed to mobilize everyone in and out of Miracle City to join in the repair work. The order was given. The entire city responded. Whether it was the gnomes in Miracle City or the people from the surrounding tribes, they all gathered together. Then, the 200,000 to 300,000 people were divided into many small teams and went to different tribes to carry out the repair work. The entire scene was lively and noisy, giving people a strange feeling in their hearts. This was a kind of warmth that he had never felt before. It was more like a sense of belonging to his home. Miracle City did not just obtain victory this time, it also promoted the unity of the local tribes and Miracle City. Miracle Radio seized this chance to report the situation in the various areas, publicizing the positive and hot-blooded events that happened during the battle, promoting the harmonious scene of the tribes and the city united as a family. They even planned to make a related movie. In short, for several hundred years, the tribes in the forest had been in conflict with each other and there were frequent conflicts between the tribes and the city. After fighting together this time, it greatly increased the friendship between the tribes and the city. When Chu Tian and Meng Yingying were busy distributing supplies, Nangong Yun anxiously rushed over to ask, "Boss, we've caught a total of 60,000 captives. What should we do with them?" "So many." Nangong Yun didn't wait for a reply and first said her own opinion. "I think we should just kill them. Since they are invading other people's homes, they should be prepared to pay the price with their lives. Killing them will raise the morale of Miracle City's people and intimidate these thieves, making it so the enemies won't dare invade again." "This is over 60,000 people." Meng Yingying revealed a look of disbelief. "Kill over 60,000 people? What kind of bloody scene would that be? This method is just too cruel. What else can we do if we don't kill them?" Nangong Yun was an extreme martial artist, but she wasn't a bloodthirsty person. She felt that killing them was wrong, but she couldn't think of a better way to deal with them. These are all villains that have invaded Miracle City. Many of their hands are dyed with the blood of Miracle City's people. If we let them go like this, it will affect the morale of Miracle City's people. Meng Yingying gave a suggestion, but our Miracle City will need to expand in the future and we will need to deal with further tribes. If we kill 60,000 captives at once and most of these captives are from the local tribes, I'm afraid it will arouse their hostility towards Miracle City. It won't be good for our company's development in the future. What you say isn't wrong. Nangong Yun didn't know what to do. She couldn't kill them and she couldn't not kill them. 60,000 mouths had to be eaten. Miracle City's finances were already collapsing. How could they support all these people in the long term? "Boss, you should make the decision." "You need to ask me such a simple question? We can't release them like this. They are our own sins and debts, so of course we have to pay the price." Chu Tian rolled his eyes. "But you don't need to kill them. Go find the young miss and make a list of the captives with a price tag. Then send the price list to the tribes and cities and have them come up with money to redeem them. As for the price, the darker the better." "What if they don't ransom them?" "Don't ransom them? Then they can't blame Miracle City. After all, Miracle City gave the captives a chance, but their tribes gave up on this chance. Miracle City is already being extremely benevolent. Chu Tian paused before saying, if they don't receive the ransom for a long time, then lock them up as slaves for Miracle City or sell them to slave traders. In short, all the ransom or other income will be used as compensation for the casualties. Meng Yingying and Nan Gongyun's eyes lit up. This was a good method. Not only did it leave room to not offend these locals, it created a benevolent and magnanimous image in the forest. It would also give the Miracle City people more compensation, easing Miracle City's financial situation and stabilizing the hearts of the Miracle City people. Boss is too smart, will do it like this. Right now Miracle City was busy with the repairs after the battle. Chu Tian was the city lord, so naturally he had to personally reward the citizens and soldiers. Therefore, he brought the production minister Meng Yingying everywhere to give out benefits and rewards. Nan Gongyun was the city defense and military minister in Miracle City. Her task was to deal with the captives and repair the lost source energy weapons. Dolores was the minister of commerce and finance, so of course she had to settle the losses and comfort the tribes. Dongfang Haoren was Miracle City's general, so he had to clean up the troops and let Miracle City's army recover their battle strength. Meng Qingwu was in charge of the overall situation, so of course she was the busiest person. Not only did she have to deal with the talismans, she also had to plan the repairs after the battle. Luckily there was Smart Brain Zero's help, so she didn't need anyone else to help her with this large amount of work. The Elven King seemed to have been forgotten on the side. Of course the Elven King Lancelot didn't care about these small matters. While he was helping the flower fairies cultivate the ancient tree of life in the Miracle Gardens, he was also observing Miracle City's situation. When Lancelot saw that after Miracle City suffered a large calamity, they actually recovered in an orderly manner. There was no chaos during the entire process, which made him very shocked. There were over 10 different races living in Miracle City's area. Not to mention this kind of chaotic time, even in normal situations, it would be very chaotic. The different races in Miracle City seemed to have a tacit understanding. They all wished for Miracle City to be strong from the bottom of their hearts. This was a very rare scene in the Forest of Chaos. Although Chu Tian's team was a bit immature, they still displayed outstanding abilities. Finally, Miracle City's pacification work was finished. Chu Tian gathered the city's high management, Clark, and the various tribe leaders for a meeting, mainly commending everyone for their good performance in the city's crisis. Chu Tian also opened up the rights to 100,000 citizens to the various tribes. The tribes in the Miracle Mountain Ridge were like villages and Miracle City was like a large city. The villagers being able to enter a large city was a matter to be proud of. After all, living in Miracle City, not only would they be safer, they would also receive many benefits as citizens in the future, making their lives more colorful. Chu Tian opening up 200,000 people was a very good thing for these tribes. Dolores finally let out a long sigh of relief after the meeting was over. It's finally over. We have to think of a way to earn money. The current hole in our funds is too big. Meng Qingwu asked. Zero, how long can our finances last? Reporting to Sir City Lord, most of our resources have been invested into the budget for rebuilding after the war. Zero honestly replied. Because the surrounding tribes have been heavily injured and the industrial park has been damaged, Miracle Bank has large amounts of bad debts. With Miracle Commerce's current finances, we can't cover it all. If we keep this up, our finances will collapse in 2-3 months. Meng Qingwu tightly knit her brows. It's actually this serious? It seems like we have to open new markets as soon as possible and obtain new income to cover the current situation. Actually, with Miracle Commerce's conditions and abilities, if they were given a year to stabilize, these problems wouldn't be a problem at all. The problem was, would there really be this kind of chance? Meng Qingwu could foresee that in the future, Miracle City would become the focus of the entire forest. They could barely hold on now, but they couldn't afford to fall into chaos in the future. If there was another similar battle, Miracle City really wouldn't be able to hold on. When Meng Qingwu was thinking of countermeasures, Meng Yingying called and she anxiously shouted, Elder sister, this is bad, quickly come to the transport tower. There are many people coming from the Eternal Forest and they're all clamoring to steal our Miracle City. Chapter 493. One of the things Meng Qingwu was most worried about had finally happened. The ancient tree of life being planted in Miracle City would attract the attention of the forest giants, and it would make the relationship between Miracle City and the Eternal Forest even more complicated. This was because the ancient tree of life was like a god to the wood elves, just like how the demonic god religion worshipped the little fox. How could the elves allow this kind of important divine object to be taken by outsiders? If this conflict couldn't be resolved, there would be a large problem. In front of the Eternal Forest, Miracle City's strength was too insignificant. Meng Qingwu did not dare be negligent. She put down what she was doing and rushed over. Vivian wanted to build the transport tower for the Eternal Forest to benefit both Miracle City and the Eternal Forest, but when several dozen Elven Council members were sent over, the entire matter developed in a completely unpredictable direction. The ancient tree of life had already grown to around 2 meters in just 2-3 days. The life energy it released was even more vigorous, and it was beginning to show its abilities. This divine tree was planted in the center of the garden, and it immediately connected to the several hundred-mile spiritual veins. It extracted even more pure spiritual energy from the depths of the veins, nourishing the surrounding soil by 10 to 100 times. Its effect surpassed the best spirit-gathering array. Miracle City's spiritual energy became more abundant, and each grain of soil was filled with energy. With the ancient tree of life continuously releasing life energy, all the surrounding plants and animals were nourished, especially the elixirs in the garden. Their growth in a day was equivalent to a month of growth in the past. In other words, the growth of a sacred herb in several weeks was equivalent to a year in a normal environment. If an herb was planted for several years, wouldn't it become a 1,000-year-old herb? Even if Miracle City didn't do anything, they could just buy large amounts of low-aged herbs and sell them to earn large amounts of money. Not to mention the fact that the ancient tree of life had just been born for a few days, its growth potential was unimaginable. Who wouldn't be tempted by this kind of divine object? Not to mention the fact that the ancient tree of life had a special meaning to the Eternal Forest's elves. Once the ancient tree of life was planted, it would be very difficult to transplant it. At least they didn't have the conditions to transplant it right now. The Eternal Forest elves had no choice. They could only think of one method, which was to take Miracle City and let Miracle City become an elven city again. This was something Vivian never thought of at all. You don't have the strength to protect Miracle City and the ancient tree of life. The elf council member's attitude was firm. He almost pointed at Chu Tian's nose and shouted, "This tree means too much to the elves. This is the supreme treasure of the elves. Do you want to take it for yourself?" That's right. From today on, Miracle City will be protected by the Eternal Forest. Another Elven Council member said, "Of course, everything you've done for the Eternal Forest will always remember it. The elves will give you enough compensation." The Elven Council's attitude was surprisingly unanimous. Even Ulysses wanted the elves to personally protect the city. Seeing this, Meng Qingwu felt that the situation had become tricky. The Elven Council's attitude was very firm, and there seemed to be no room for negotiation. Miracle Commerce had invested so much effort into Miracle City, how could they just give it up like this? Ha! Are you pretending to be stupid, or have you all lost your memories? Chu Tian took out a scroll from his chest. Miracle City has completely severed its relationship with the Eternal Forest. The Eternal Forest's Elven Council and the Elven King have agreed to recognize Miracle City's sovereignty and will not be violated. This contract has the signatures of every member and the Elven King. Could it be that the elves who respect the law and the spirit of contracts are going to go against it today? The Elven Council members had ugly expressions. Now they finally understood that they had fallen into Chu Tian's trap. This fellow had definitely drawn a line with the Eternal Forest a few days ago. He had already expected this situation with the appearance of the ancient tree of life. Chu Tian continued to say, "You elves are proud of your civilization. Are you prepared to go back on your word?" The Elven Council members' expressions all changed. Although the elves were divided into conservative and reformist factions, they were all elves in the end. They were very protective of contracts and laws. After all, this represented the spirit of the elves and was the reason why the elves were so confident. Augusta stood up in a bit of anger. Human, this is such an obvious trick. Do you think the elves don't have brains? Whatever you say is fine. Chu Tian laughed. The Eternal Forest is 100 times stronger than Miracle City, and Miracle City is definitely weak. Bullying the weak and breaking the contract, what can I do? Just come. At worst you can kill me and show the hypocrisy of the elves to the world. Big brother Chutan, don't be angry. Vivian saw that the situation was bad and she quickly stood up. Grandfather speaker, why do you have to force Big brother Chu Tian? If there wasn't Big brother Chu Tian, would Miracle City still be Miracle City? Why can't we work together? Relax, the elves don't do things like bullying the weak. Augusta gave a cold snort. It's just a contract created by a conspiracy, it can't bind the Eternal Forest. The elves will take back Miracle City legally. Chu Tian gave Vivian a look. How hard was it to deal with this group of rotten wood? The elves had a fatal flaw in their character. No matter how old they were, no matter how long they lived or how much knowledge they accumulated, they would always be simple and inflexible. The elves had a long and complicated law. Chu Tian could find several loopholes with his eyes closed. Also, the elves were very slow at doing things. If they really wanted to argue with Chu Tian, it would take a long time. Ulysses had dealt with Chu Tian before, so he knew that this wasn't a good idea. He immediately gave a suggestion. Chu Tian, we know that you've invested your heart and soul into Miracle City. The elves are not an unreasonable race. How about we trade cities for cities to compensate you? What trade cities? Give me a map. Ulysses opened a large map, circling an area in the southern part of the Forest of Chaos. This forest is called the Silver Moon Forest. It is not worse than Miracle City in every aspect. The elves have been in Silver Moon City for over 5,000 years. It is several times more prosperous than Miracle City, which only has a few hundred years of history. Not only are there no opponents in the surrounding several thousand miles, there is also a perfect natural barrier and city defense system. If you can enter it, you will have all the resources in your hands. You will still be the city lord of Silver Moon City, but your wealth will increase by 10 times. Meng Qingwu was speechless hearing this from the side. These elves were really willing to take out their hands. The other elven counselors revealed difficult expressions. The Silver Moon Forest was the most prosperous city in the Eternal Forest, but in order to obtain Miracle City, they actually made this kind of decision. This was truly hard on them. We won't trade. Boo. The elven counselors slapped the table. This human was too arrogant. The elves had clearly made a large concession and given the compensation. What else did he want? There was a reason why Chu Tian didn't care about Silver Moon City. Silver Moon City was an elven city and the elves were a highly xenophobic race. If Chu Tian chose to accept the elven city, when the elves left, it would be equivalent to obtaining an empty city. What use did he have for an empty city? How could Chu Tian care about this little bit of wealth and benefits in front of him? Compared to Miracle City, although it wasn't complete in all aspects, Chu Tian had already gained a foothold here. This place had the best laboratory and the most scholars in the forest and was in the center of the Forest of Chaos, containing a large amount of potential. The most important thing was the ancient Tree of Life. It had a very important meaning to Chu Tian. You have to understand, I'm not doing this for myself. This is also for the Eternal Forest and the elves. Chu Tian knew that he had to use reason to deal with these elves. There are 3 fatal flaws in the Eternal Forest's rule over Miracle City. Not only will you not be able to protect the ancient Tree of Life, it will also cause the entire Eternal Forest to fall into danger. Nonsense. Alarmist words. Chu Tian didn't care what these old elves said as he continued to explain. First, Miracle City and the surrounding several thousand miles are filled with many different races. This is not compatible with the elves. The elven culture cannot be established here at all. Could it be that the elves want to chase away these 10 million people? Second, the elves are slow and have no motivation. It would be fine if it was a normal city. You could slowly build a city with your long lifespan. But Miracle City is a battlefield and there is the ancient Tree of Life as the fuse. Do you still have time to slowly build a city? Third, the ancient Tree of Life is a relic from the great ancient era, so the elves will naturally have a large increase in strength once they obtain it. However, the ancient tree of life needs a long time to grow. Do you think the other forest powers will sit and watch you grow? Chu Tian clearly wasn't speaking nonsense. At least the elves had no choice but to face these problems. How would the eternal forest develop in Miracle City, and how would they face pressure from all sides? Of course, these problems were not considered by the Elven Council. Although the elves didn't like fighting, they had absolute confidence in their own strength. They didn't fear fighting against the forest giants, they just wanted to bring back the ancient tree of life. The ancient tree of life was too important to the elves. When Augusta was prepared to refute Chu Tian's words aren't wrong. The Elven King, who didn't say anything from the start, spoke up. Let's not discuss Miracle City's matters for now, we might have some trouble. Trouble? What trouble? While everyone was puzzled, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the sky. It was as if a hole had been punched in the sky. Soon after, several shadows appeared on the horizon. One of them was a huge shadow. From afar, it was at least 100 meters long. Its entire body was pitch black and covered in black scales. It had an incomparably huge pair of wings. Wherever it flew, even the forest was torn apart by its powerful aura. Augusta's expression fell. This is Dragon Lord. The Elven King Lancelot had a serious expression. Deathwing Nidhogg. Chapter 494. Nidhogg. There weren't many people who knew this name in the forest because people were used to calling him the Dragon Lord or Deathwing. No one knew how long Deathwing had lived for. With a lifespan of tens of thousands of years, he should have just reached middle age among the giant dragons. Deathwing, who was at least 10-20,000 years old, could be considered one of the oldest beings in the Forest of Chaos. Deathwing occupied the Dragon's Ridge. Legends said that Dragon City was a city made of treasures, and the treasures there could be piled up into the sky. The dragons all had a strong hobby of collecting, and Deathwing Nidhogg was one of the best. He had an almost infinite lifespan and a strength that could look down on all living beings, so he had enough time to plunder and collect treasures for himself. There was no doubt. Deathwing Nidhogg was the most famous collector in the Forest of Chaos. Other than that, Deathwing was the richest person in the Forest of Chaos. This Dragon Lord was a black dragon with a pure bloodline, mainly using the power of darkness and death. Therefore, the people he gathered were mostly evil people. There were quite a few dark races that were recruited from underground, like the Dark Elves, the Dark Spirit Beasts, the Demons, and etc. There were even quite a few liches that worked for him. His influence was very strong, covering the sky with one hand. A single sneeze from him could cause a riot in the Forest of Chaos. Too strong. This pressure was too strong. Deathwing's strength was clearly on the same level as the Elven King. But the Elven King gave people a feeling like he didn't have any strength, while Deathwing's pressure was released to the peak. This was not a normal pressure, it was a dragon's might, the might of a giant dragon. This was the might of a peak life form against a low life form. It was like an overlord at the top of the food chain looking down at a pitiful little ant. When this pressure hit Miracle City, there were some weak people with weak wills that fainted on the spot. The others were trembling and they couldn't even stand straight. Meng Qingwu and the others all had pale faces. This was the power of a giant dragon? It was not something a mortal could resist. Deathwing did not come alone, he had several dragons with him. These dragons were dragons with a slightly lower bloodline, but they were still terrifying existences that would not lose to the Eternal Forest's elven counselors. On the back of each dragon, there were some liches, ghouls, and dark elves. So, even if there was a difference in strength, it wasn't too big. Lancelot? I knew you would be here. Deathwing's giant body released a black light and countless profound runes appeared around it. After 4 to 5 seconds, the light quickly dimmed and shrank. In just a few seconds, the wingspan of over 100 meters began to rapidly shrink into a humanoid form that was only about 3 meters tall. Of course, this was definitely not a human. Deathwing's body was still covered in dragon scales, with a pair of majestic dragon wings spread out behind him. The white bone spikes on the ends were like bone spears. His eyes were dark gold and his pupils were reptilian, long and cold. Although he was smaller, his majesty didn't decrease at all. The Elven King released a gentle and natural aura that instantly balanced out Deathwing's killing intent, making everyone let out a sigh of relief. We haven't seen each other for at least 80 years. Do you really have to release killing intent as soon as we meet? Let's sit down and have a good chat. Deathwing's dragon wings shook. What's the rush? Not everyone is here. The Elven King was a bit stunned and immediately felt something. Although he couldn't see it with the naked eye, the Elven King could see everything within 100 miles with the forest scepter. At this time, two groups of figures the size of small mountains were approaching Miracle City at the same time. The heavens and earth shook. All living beings were bowing down. This was like a scene of a deity descending. A vast pressure swept in all directions, and with an earthquake-like trembling, 15 giants appeared in their field of view. If they didn't personally see it, no one would believe that there would be such tall people in this world. Each giant was around 100 meters tall, and a human standing in front of them looked like a toe. Each giant's skin was covered in a metallic luster, giving people a feeling of being invulnerable. At the same time, each giant's body was covered in large amounts of lightning runes. There were no pupils in their eye sockets, only burning flames of thunder. Titan. This was the Titan race. The Titan race was the highest level of giants. There weren't many of them left on the continent. They could be considered as rare existences like phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. The Titan's body contained the terrifying power of heavenly lightning, therefore it had a destructive power that even gods and ghosts couldn't block. It was a terrifying race that made everyone tremble in fear. In another direction, there were several dozen incomparably large figures moving about. These figures were a bit smaller than the Titans, but they were much thicker. They looked like giant apes, but they had terrifying fangs and claws. Their large bloody mouths could easily swallow 3-5 bulls at once. Wherever these gigantic beasts passed by, there was a violent, murderous aura, and all sorts of unparalleled ferocious beasts' auras. It was enough to make any living creature retreat. Behemoth. This was the Behemoth race. The Behemoth race was also a very ancient race. The Behemoth's reproductive ability was very poor, so there were very few of them. Moreover, the Behemoth race had a very interesting characteristic. Every 100 behemoths born, 99 of them would be called behemoth giant beasts. What was a giant beast? They only had strength, but their minds were simple. These behemoth giant beasts were very terrifying. They could be considered natural war machines. Moreover, they were very cruel, filled with a natural desire for destruction and slaughter. Every 100 behemoths born, there would only be one intelligent behemoth. This behemoth was the natural king of beasts, the king of spirit beasts. It was a natural-born leader. The savage highlands and the giant mountain ranges people are here? Chu Tian slightly knit his brows when he saw this. This matter is becoming more and more lively. The Titans and behemoths stayed outside Miracle City. Two figures charged into Miracle City. One was a man around the same height as a dwarf, and the other was a miniature behemoth that had shrunk several dozen times. These two people's auras were not much inferior to the Elven King's. They should have used a secret technique similar to Deathwing's to shrink their bodies. Great Titan, Thunder Fury Sylvester. Golden Behemoth, Burst Claw Nukazin. These two people were also legendary characters. One was the highest leader of the giant mountain range, and the other was the king of beasts in the savage highlands. Adding in the Dragon Lord's master and the eternal forest king. The four most influential people in the Forest of Chaos were all here. This was definitely a scene rarely seen in 100 years. The Elven Council speaker Augusta walked beside the Elven King and coldly looked at these fellows. What are you doing here? Even though Renu had become as short as a dwarf, his aura was still intimidating. He looked at Augusta and said in a slightly mocking tone, "You're still alive, old elf? It really isn't easy." Augusta's face sunk. "Thunder Fury, you better be more polite with your words." Whether it was the Titan Thunder Fury, the Behemoth Burst Claw, or the Dragon Lord Deathwing, they were all existences with incomparably long lifespans. Even the elves in front of them had already been replaced several times. Of course, having a long lifespan had its advantages and having a short lifespan had its advantages. The elves had the most experts, and the elven king Lancelot was not inferior to these three. Other than that, the elven speaker Augusta was also an expert on the same level. The highest elven leaders of the forests under the elves' control were only experts that were a level lower. The laws of the continent were fair. Long lifespans, weak reproduction, slow growth, and strong individual strength. Short lifespans, fast reproduction, and fast growth, group strength could not be ignored. The reason why the humans could quickly rise on the continent was because of this. Burstclaw said in a deep and heavy voice, "Lancelot, you're not going to give me an explanation for killing my people?" The elven king revealed a faint smile. "I gave him a chance, it was him who didn't cherish it." Burstclaw's eyes were filled with a red light and a cruel killing intent appeared. It said that the Eternal Forest's current elven king is even more elegant than the previous one. "You've only been on the throne for 100 years and haven't fought yet, how about we take this chance to compete?" The two of them were both peak experts of the forest. If they fought in Miracle City, the situation wouldn't be good. "I have no objections if you want to compete." Deathwing seemed like he had no interest in fighting with these people, but my time is very precious, so I'll go straight to the main topic. I can smell the ancient tree of life's scent, and with such a good thing appearing, aren't the elves prepared to let us see it? Thunder flashed around Raynor when he heard this. This is the common treasure of the entire forest. The elves wouldn't want to take it all for themselves, right? The behemoth's Burstclaw's killing intent disappeared, and he revealed a look of dread. If the Eternal Forest obtained the story of life, the Eternal Forest's influence would greatly increase. Although the Eternal Forest didn't like fighting, who would like a superpower hiding in their territory? An ancient item is a heaven-defying item. This kind of ominous thing should be destroyed. The ancient tree of life was undoubtedly a good thing. But whether it was the Dragon's Ridge, the Giant's Mountain Range, or the Savage Highlands, they all didn't want this thing to fall into the Eternal Forest's hands. Even if they couldn't obtain it, they had to destroy it. The elves revealed looks of high vigilance. Augusta coldly said, "If you have the ability, then come and take it yourself." 3 against 2, the elves didn't have a high chance of winning. The entire Elven Council was here, and there were several dozen experts from the Eternal Forest. They had the power of the ancient tree of life behind them, so if they fought to the death, they might have a chance of winning. Under the leadership of the forest's 4 giants, there were several dozen wyverns, several dozen titans, several dozen behemoths, and over 100 elven experts. If they were to fight, would Miracle City still exist? When swords were drawn on all sides, an insignificant voice came from the side. "Can I say a few words?" Chapter 495. This voice came too suddenly. Whether it was Burstclaw, Thunder's Fury, or Deathwing, they had never placed creatures other than elves in their eyes. Humans did not have any influence in the Forest of Chaos, so they were often called outsiders. Not to mention that these humans were so weak. When several large characters were in a fierce confrontation, a bug suddenly appeared beside them. What kind of result would this bug have in the end? Trample it to death. What qualifications does an ant have to speak? A violent claw glow burst out, setting off a scarlet tornado that was several meters tall. The ground was torn apart like paper as it flew towards Chu Tian with a destructive force. This was just a casual attack from Burstclaw, but its might was not something that Chu Tian could block with his strength. Killing a human like this was no different from killing a bug to Burstclaw. "Burstclaw, your temper is still this big." Lancelot waved his forest scepter, and from the ground around Chu Tian, countless wooden vines came out. Each vine was only as thick as a finger and looked weak, but they released an unbelievable power and speed. They slammed into the claw glow like lightning, and the entire tornado was instantly shattered. This time Burstclaw and Thunder's Fury revealed a trace of fear. The current Elven King had only been on the throne for 100 years, and because the Eternal Forest did not participate in any battles, Lancelot had never fought with any of the other large characters. So no one knew how strong the Elven King was. The Forest Scepter was one of the Eternal Forest's treasures, and its might was inseparable from the user's strength. The Elven King did not use any of his own strength at all, just using the forest scepter's power to resolve Burst Claw's attack. He did not reveal himself, but this was enough to prove that the Elven King's cultivation was not low. The most important thing was that the forest scepter was refined from a branch of the ancient Tree of Life. Now that it was covered by the ancient Tree of Life's power, the forest scepter's might would increase by a large amount. The Elven King could fight against a peak forest expert with just the forest scepter's might. If he added in his own strength, it was not impossible for him to fight one against two. In this way, with the addition of Augusta, they might not suffer too much in a direct conflict. The Elven King ignored Burst Claw's fiendish expression. His gaze fell on Chu Tian. "What do you want to say?" "Thank you, Your Majesty the Elf King." Chu Tian's expression didn't change from beginning to end. He walked to the center of the four giants. Regardless of whether he was facing the high and mighty draconic might, the imposing and domineering Titan, or the ferocious and terrifying behemoth, he acted as if nothing had happened. It was as if the pressure didn't exist at all. A few of the big shots were astonished. This human, who wasn't particularly strong, was actually able to remain calm in the face of such pressure. This was no longer a matter of courage or mental fortitude. Regardless of whether it was the Elf King, Behemoth, Titan, or Giant Dragon, all of them were existences that far surpassed humans in terms of life level. Their deterrence didn't only come from the difference in strength, but also from the very essence of their souls. A little lamb might dare to provoke a powerful water buffalo, but even the bravest lamb, if it was placed in front of a pack of tigers and lions, that kind of fear that was deeply rooted in its soul wasn't something that could be overcome with courage. Not to mention the titans, behemoth, and giant dragons. In front of these ancient and tyrannical beings, humans couldn't even be considered lambs. This was the high-level beings looking down on the low-level beings. Chu Tian could remain calm under this kind of gaze. How could people not be shocked? This meant that no matter how strong this human was, at least in his heart and in his soul, there was an expert that dared to challenge a giant dragon. Thunder's Fury had a bit of respect for this human. "Who are you?" "The master of this land, Miracle City's City Lord Chu Tian." "Chu Tian?" Deathwing's long and cold dark golden eyes stared at him, just like a poisonous snake staring at a frog. Although it was calm, it released a chill that made people's hairs stand on end. "So you're saying that my subordinate was killed by you? You're talking about that lich?" No, respected Dragon Lord, you must have made a mistake." Chu Tian was not shocked by the black dragon's aura at all as he said with a relaxed expression, "Not only is he not dead, he's alive and well, but he has already jumped ship." "Zero, your old leader is here, are you not going to greet him?" Deathwing was stunned. "Respected Dragon Lord, Dragon City Lord, Your Majesty Deathwing." A cold voice without any emotions came from the speaker in the corner. "Sir City Lord has given me a new life and I'm living very well now. I ask Your Majesty Deathwing to not worry about me." Deathwing's expression changed and he immediately looked around. "Where are you?" Zero is Miracle City's manager. His ears can cover Miracle City and his eyes can cover Miracle City, so he is everywhere. Chu Tian knew that explaining this to Deathwing was troublesome. In a sense, Zero's existence is close to a spiritual god. Such a wild-speaking human. Burst Claw took a step forward. "The wild shaman religion's Green City branch, it seems like it was also destroyed by you." Chu Tian looked at him and shook his head as he said, "Powerful 10,000 Beast King, I didn't destroy the shaman religion. It's the opposite, rather I made them flourish. A small Green City shaman branch has already jumped out of the forest and established their influence in the distant Warhounds Plains. Just based on this point, wouldn't the Savage Highlands headquarters find it hard to do? So I didn't destroy any shaman branch, rather it's the opposite, I pushed the shaman religion forward. The shaman religion was developing in the Warhounds Plains? Who would believe this matter? Your eyes are too short." Chu Tian's words made everyone break out in a cold sweat. Daring to say these large characters were short-sighted, only Chu Tian dared to do this in the entire forest. "You're only fighting for benefits in the small forest of chaos? Does the continent only have this small forest? With your strength and my technology, how hard would it be to become an overlord of the continent in the future?" These words were too much. Even in the Forest of Chaos, there were still many places that had not been developed. Chu Tian said, "The ancient tree of life can't be moved and Miracle City can't be seeded. This is an iron principle that no one can change. Of course, with your strength, you can easily take Miracle City, but have you ever thought that if you do this, the Forest of Chaos will be filled with an unprecedented chaotic war? The ancient tree of life's value lies in creating life. Could it be that you want to watch it become a fuse for death and war?" Augusta objected, "The ancient tree of life belongs to the elves. If you want to take the elves' divine object, why do you need to use this kind of high-sounding excuse?" "You're wrong," Chu Tian announced in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Miracle City has no intention of becoming enemies with any power. For Miracle City's stability and for the millions of lives to be saved, Miracle City has its value. As long as everyone takes a step back with Miracle City as the center, we can create a special region in the center of the Forest of Chaos. Whether it is Miracle Commerce's technology or the ancient tree of life's power, it will all benefit everyone. At that time, not only will the Eternal Forest obtain large benefits, the Dragon's Ridge, the Giant's Mountain Range, and the Savage Highlands will also change. If the Dragon Lord is willing to cooperate with Miracle Commerce, with Miracle Commerce's channels, you can earn money from the continent in the future. Wouldn't the Dragon Lord's wealth be 10 times greater? If the Titans cooperate with Miracle Commerce, the Titans craftsmen can pick any material they need, even if it's the stars in the sky. They can be plucked for you and the giants can build magnificent palaces. At that time, wouldn't the giants obtain 10 times the resources they do now? If the Savage Highlands cooperate with Miracle Commerce, we can sell you the strongest and most advanced weapons on the continent, allowing your armies to kill their way out of the Forest of Chaos, sweeping in all directions and sweeping through everything. At that time, wouldn't you obtain 10 times the land you do now? Although the Forest of Chaos communication was blocked, these giants all had eyes and ears. With what happened to Miracle City recently, it was impossible for them not to know about Miracle City's technology. At least they knew a part of it. If Chu Tian was given enough time, Chu Tian had the ability to do this. However, would these big shots agree to it? If they built a special region in the center of the forest with Miracle City as the center, wouldn't they be supporting a fifth power outside of the 4 great powers? If they waited until Miracle City became big, what would they do if they smashed their own feet with a rock? I support the proposal to build a special region. The Elven King was the first to speak. Miracle City is related to a large conflict of interest. How about everyone take a step back? The elves are willing to become Miracle City's most reliable ally. Augusta was dissatisfied with this decision. Why did the elves have to lower their heads to a human? No matter how strong Chu Tian's potential was, he still hadn't matured yet. Death Wing, Thunder Nu, and Burst Claw were even more dissatisfied with this. Miracle City had a close relationship with the Eternal Forest, and one of Miracle City's Vice City Lords was someone from the Eternal Forest. If they acknowledged Miracle City's independent status and allowed Chu Tian's group to continue raising the ancient tree of life, wouldn't the Eternal Forest benefit the most in the end? I agree with Chu Tian's proposal. When the 3 large characters didn't say anything, a deep voice came from the ground. Cenarius. The large characters were all shocked because hundreds of Trey ants had appeared around Miracle City at an unknown time. The one leading them was over 100 meters tall. It was the Trey ant patriarch Cenarius who had the title of Forest Protector. When Chu Tian saw Cenarius appear, he let out a long sigh of relief. "You're finally here." Cenarius slowly and firmly stepped forward. "The Trey ants are willing to die to protect the ancient tree of life. Anyone that tries to harm or destroy the ancient tree of life will become the eternal enemy of the Trey ants." I agree with City Lord Chu Tian's proposal. The Trey ants will move to Miracle City and form a defensive line for Miracle City. Chapter 496. The Protector of the Forest, Cenarius. Basically, everyone had forgotten about this large character. Cenarius's individual strength was not weaker than the peak experts of the Forest of Chaos, and the forest power that Cenarius led was a power that could not be ignored in the Forest of Chaos. Only the tree ants were very rare and they didn't move for several hundred years, so there was no need to fight for resources. Therefore, they were even more low-key than the elves and were ignored. Now they were suddenly dragged in. The entire situation was different. The tree ants leaned towards the elves. This was a fact that no one could deny. After all, the wood elves and tree ants had a large similarity. They both viewed the ancient tree of life as a divine object. It was the ancient tree of life's power that gave birth to their ancestors and gave them their power. With the Elven King as the leader and the strength of the elves and tree ants, if the two sides fought, their chances of victory would decrease by quite a bit. It was very likely this would become a long battle. This would drag the entire forest into the swamp of war. If the entire forest fell into the swamp of war, the situation could be predicted. The image the eternal forest had built over the years would have a decisive effect at this time. Imagine, there are two neighbors. One is a ferocious tiger that often invades others, and the other is an elephant that is equally strong but knows its place and does not expand. When the two neighbors fight, the two neighbors will fight each other. Who would you help? It could be guessed even with your feet. If the two sides were in a stalemate and couldn't decide a winner, most of the neutral forest cities and tribes would side with the eternal forest. This would suppress the overall strength of the other three sides. Burst Claw gritted his teeth. Aren't you afraid of the rare tree ants going extinct? Each tree ant can be sacrificed for the ancient tree of life. Cenarius' voice was slow and sluggish, but it was filled with an unshakable determination. If you doubt the Trent's determination, you can give it a try. Cenarius was not joking. Actually, the tree ants never joked. The tree ants were a very serious race. They didn't have many emotions and were very stubborn. Not to mention that the ancient tree of life was related to the tree ants even more than the wood elves. The ancient tree of life was the father of the tree ants and their god. The atmosphere instantly fell into a deadlock. All right, the 1,000-year-old Cenarius has appeared, so I'll give you face. Deathwing expressed his stance first. I support Miracle City's independence. Since Deathwing said this, what objections could Burst Claw and Thunder's Fury have? This wasn't because they truly wanted to support Miracle City, it was just a delaying tactic. As long as the ancient tree of life wasn't completely controlled by the eternal forest, these three powers didn't need to fear them. No matter how powerful the tree ants were, their numbers were still limited. The wood elves were the true opponents that they had to be wary of. Augusta was still not satisfied with this result. In the end, after going through so much trouble, he still couldn't retrieve the ancient tree of life. Instead, this insignificant city, Miracle City, became completely independent. The Elven King Lancelot said before Augusta could, since it's like this, the elves have also agreed. Your Majesty, this is the best result. The Elven King looked at Augusta. Sir Speaker doesn't want to see the entire forest of chaos turn into rivers of blood and people die. Indeed, that was the best outcome. To the three powers, as long as the ancient tree of life didn't fall into the eternal forest's hands, there was still room for a buffer and solution. To the elves, although the ancient tree of life didn't fall into their hands, with the transport tower, how hard would it be for the elves to come to Miracle City? Not to mention that Cenarius was guarding Miracle City and the tree ants were close to the elves, this was a chance for the elves. If both sides took a step back, the forest of chaos would be safe. If they fought to the end, both sides would suffer heavy losses and there would be no winners. The Elven King had to consider many things. He hoped to use Miracle City to reform the elves, so it wasn't troublesome to have some connections, rather it was necessary. Alright. Thunder's Fury looked at Cenarius. Since it's like this, I'll ask Cenarius to be fair. I believe the tree ants won't go back on their word. Cenarius slowly said in a voice filled with power and determination, with the name of the Forest Protector, the tree ants will protect Miracle City's position as a neutral city and support Miracle City's city lord, Chu Tion's position. Whether it is the elves, dragons, titans, behemoths, or any other race in the forest, if they try to take Miracle City for themselves or use any methods to directly or indirectly control the ancient tree of life or Miracle City, they will be considered enemies of the tree ants. The tree ants wouldn't go back on their word. Not to mention a person like Cenarius. This kind of promise was more effective than any contract. At least it could ensure that Miracle City wouldn't fall into the elves' hands. Because everything happened so suddenly, no one was prepared, so this was the best solution. Lancelot, I hope you can keep your word. Goodbye. Death Wing, Burst Claw, and Thunder's Fury quickly left Miracle City. They knew that they didn't make enough preparations this time, so this promise was just a delaying tactic. As for how to deal with Miracle City and the ancient Tree of Life, they had to consider it further. The elven counselors all had dark faces. The Miracle City people all had strange expressions on their faces. In the end, the 4 giants didn't gain any benefits at all, and it was the weak Miracle City that gained the benefits. This change of events was too much for them to handle. Damn. Finally, Augusta could only pinch his nose and throw it away. We're returning to the Eternal Forest for the meeting. Other than the Elven King father and daughter, the other elves all left Miracle City. Ha ha, it really was dangerous. Chu Tian cupped his hands to Cenarius, not feeling any joy from surviving a disaster at all. Rather, he said with a mischievous smile, it's a good thing you appeared in time, otherwise Father's City Lord position wouldn't be stable. You bringing the ancient Tree of Life to the world is a historic feat. Cenarius spoke very slowly, but it was able to reach the heart, giving people a peaceful feeling. The Traiants will protect the growth of the ancient tree and will also protect the rights you have. Meng Qingwu didn't believe her own guess. Respected Forest Protector, may I ask how much the Traiants will send to protect Miracle City? All of them. All of them? The Traiants will only follow the agreement. They won't accept Miracle City's orders. Although Miracle City couldn't directly order the Traiants, in the mountains around Miracle City, if there were tens of thousands of Traiants stationed, how strong would Miracle City's defenses be? Would Miracle City still need to worry about being attacked like this? Unless one of the 4 major powers came to attack, the matter of them being attacked into the city would never happen again. Young Miss, Yinging, what are you standing there for? Chu Tian shouted, why aren't you helping our respected Traiant friend settle down? Cenarius was the strongest Traiant, so of course he was placed in the Miracle Gardens. Not only could he protect the ancient Tree of Life, he also didn't need to worry about the treasures in the gardens being destroyed. As for the other Traiants, they were placed in and around Miracle City, especially in the surrounding mountain forest. The Traiants could not move for several decades or even 100 years. It was these fellows that didn't move that became Miracle City's strongest protective umbrella. Adding in Miracle City's life detection radar, no matter if the enemy was in the sky, on the ground, or underground, they couldn't hide and were instantly killed. The Elven King brought Vivian in front of Miracle City. There won't be any power in the Forest of Chaos that can easily shake your position as City Lord. You can rest easy now. You praise me too much, you praise me too much. I'm just trying to make a living. Royal Father. Vivian looked at the Elven King. You should do it now. What are you in a rush for? The Elven King helplessly shook his head before saying to Chu Tian, Vivian told me that Miracle City's bank can provide a deposit service. Moreover, the longer the deposit, the higher the interest. Vivian quickly added, the elves have quite a few idle source stones, so rather than leaving them in the forest, it's better to store them in Miracle Bank to earn some interest. Although my royal father can't get past that bad-tempered speaker, it isn't a problem to make some money. Chu Tian instantly understood Vivian's intention. This girl was planning on helping Miracle City solve their financial problems. Not bad, not bad. How much do you want to deposit? Chu Tian added, the Elven King is personally depositing it, so naturally I'll give you the highest interest. I guarantee you won't suffer a loss. First deposit 150,000 source stones. Vivian decided for her father, deposit it for a year. Chu Tian's eyes lit up. This was a fucking large business. Miracle City's finances were close to collapsing, so this 100,000 source stones could be considered a timely rain, solving this urgent problem. After a year, there will be 50% interest. Chu Tian looked at the Elven King and said, Miracle City's current economic situation isn't good, this is already the limit. A year of 50% interest? The Elven King never thought that Miracle Bank's interest would be this high. Wouldn't 150,000 become 225,000 after a year? The wealth of the outstanding merchants of the continent would only be like this. The Elven King didn't do anything at all, he just moved the source stones to another place. Money isn't a problem and interest isn't a problem. The Elven King revealed a deep smile. I can even deposit it in the bank without interest. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Chu Tian saw Vivian's surprised expression and immediately asked in a vigilant voice, "What do you want to do?" "Don't be nervous." The Elven King shook his head and said, "I just want to buy a smart brain, that's all." Smart brains were all clear. This fellow knew quite a bit about Miracle City. Chu Tian thought that Miracle Commerce already had 4-5 smart brains, so it wouldn't affect Miracle City too much even if they sold one. Now that there were over 100,000 source stones in the account, he had to give face to the Elven King. "All right, I agree." The Trey Ants were personally protecting the city and there was a large amount of money coming in from the Elven King. Good news came one after another. The city's crisis and the financial crisis were solved at the same time. Whether it was the Meng Qingwu sisters, Nangong Yun, Dolores, or the entire Miracle City, they were all filled with an unprecedented pleasant surprise. Miracle City was truly blessed after surviving a disaster. Chapter 497. Miracle Commerce's blessing in disguise didn't mean they didn't have to worry. The three powers wouldn't easily compromise and the elves wouldn't easily give up. In this complicated situation, they could only cooperate with the Elven King to stabilize the elves and also develop Miracle Commerce's military strength. The Trey Ants wouldn't accept any orders. If Miracle Commerce wanted to dominate the forest, they needed a strong military strength that all the powers feared. Miracle Commerce couldn't train peak experts for now, therefore they needed to develop more advanced weapons. For this, Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu went to the Great Summer Country to understand the situation. The highest leaders of the Great Summer Yun sect, Gu Qianqiu and Yun Tianhe, personally came to greet them. These two old fellows were now true spirit cultivators, so they looked a bit younger than before. Being able to grow this fast at such an old age, one was because of several decades of experience and the other was because of Miracle Commerce. "Chairman, Vice Chairman, please take a look. This is Miracle Commerce's first automated smart brain factory." The two of them were filled with pride because the factory in front of them had a special meaning to Miracle Commerce. This was Miracle Commerce's first automated and intelligent factory, as well as the first automated factory on the continent. Miracle Commerce had invested a lot of manpower and resources, but the returns were completely worth it. Gu Qianqiu said to Chu Tian while walking, "We've already created a new generation of manufacturing. From now on, arrays, talismans, equipment processing, and products won't need any manpower and these machines will do it for us. From the simple lights and source energy pots to the complex cell phones and even the source energy computers, the core parts can all be placed in the factory for 24-hour automatic production." Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu listened to the introductions as they walked. This factory wasn't too big, but it wasn't small either. There were 200 automated machines working at the same time, making it several times faster and more efficient than humans. Therefore, Miracle Commerce could save over 1,000 excellent workers. Moreover, they wouldn't make any mistakes, they wouldn't get tired, and they wouldn't stop. They would be working at the highest efficiency every second. As for the 1,000 liberated people, they would be freed from a day's worth of work. Miracle Commerce could put more people into research and development, creating a virtuous cycle. Chu Tian asked, "How long does it take to make a super source energy matrix?" With the control of the AI, the engraving equipment will operate automatically. The efficiency of the entire factory will be greatly increased. It's not something that can be compared to manpower. Yun Tianhe proudly said, "Now we can produce a set every day. This was something we didn't even dare think about before." One set a day was still too slow. But everything had to be done step by step. Meng Qingwu, on the other hand, was very satisfied. Although the computing speed of the smart brain is still limited, the increase in the number of smart brains can also make up for the lack of individual ability. our space warehouse, transportation system, financial system, weapon equipment, manufacturing, research and development, each industry requires a large number of smart brains to control. A smart brain was really a good thing. Before Chu Tian invented it, Meng Qingwu couldn't understand its benefits. But now, he discovered that he couldn't leave the AI. Miracle City couldn't just rely on 0 and 2, they needed even more smart brains. This place will be a computer manufacturing factory in the future. We'll only make supercomputers and won't care about anything else. Chu Tian felt this wasn't enough. Other than that, we need to make faster and more advanced smart factories. In half a year, we need to have 10 in the Great Summer Country, 5 in Oldman Small Town, and 20 in Miracle City. The two old men couldn't help being speechless. That many? This is the minimum requirement. Meng Qingwu replied for Chu Tian, the manufacturing industry is the support of prosperity. Although Miracle Commerce doesn't have much money, we have accumulated enough resources over the past year and there are enough gnome scholars, so we don't need to worry about manpower. Our company's resources and manpower allocation are the highest priority, so you can directly report to the production minister Ying. Gu Qianxiu and Yun Tianhe nodded. Let's look at the weapon results. Alright, according to the chairman's design, an entire 500-person research team has been working on it for several months. Adding in the addition of smart brains, the research progress has increased by a large amount. The first generation of close combat energy and defensive weapons have finally been successfully researched. Chu Tian was a bit surprised. Let's take a look first. Gu Qianxiu took out a black metal sword hilt and a similarly black metal arm guard. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu were the highest leaders of the Yun sect. There was no need to mention Chu Tian. The core technology and ideas for the Yun sect project were all proposed by him. Meng Qingwu was not simple either. Her strong learning and memory allowed her to grasp more technology than any scholar in the Yun sect. This was the energy sword and energy shield. Miracle Commerce had always focused on researching source energy equipment, so it was impossible for the two of them to be unfamiliar with it. Miracle Commerce's source energy weapons were mainly long-range guns and missiles, lacking in close-range attacks and defense. These energy swords and energy shields were made to make up for these shortcomings. Of course, compared to normal source energy weapons, this equipment was much more technical. Although Chu Tian provided the core technology and ideas, it took several months of research and tens of thousands of source stones and materials, as well as several tens of thousands of failures before succeeding. The energy swords and energy shields use white energy. Yun Tianhe picked up the sword hilt and activated the array on it. A spider web of light spread out and with a slight buzzing sound, a bright beam of light shot out from the sword hilt. The light was not dazzling, looking very beautiful, but it also released a strong and dangerous energy fluctuation. The energy in the Sword of Light is several times stronger than the source energy cannons. It can easily cut through the protective spirit energy of a true spirit expert at close range, so its killing power in close range is quite impressive. It's not bad. Chu Tian looked at the arm guard. How about the energy shield? Meng Qingwu, in comparison, was more concerned about the energy shield technology. The energy swords could only be used in close range, but the energy shield was different. If Miracle Commerce could master the energy shield technology, they could use it in all aspects. Not only could it protect a person, it could also protect the source energy cannons, missile launchers, airships, battleships, and even cities. Yun Tianhe put the arm guard on his left hand and activated the source energy array. A half-arc of energy was released from the groove on the arm guard, covering around 2/3 of his body. The light was condensed like an energy sword and did not scatter, flowing like water. The current energy shield also uses white energy. Large amounts of energy particles collide with each other to create a repulsive force, repelling energy and physical attacks. All the energy is one, so each time it receives an attack, it will be weakened by a bit. At full strength, it can block an attack from an Earth Spirit cultivator. Meng Qingwu's eyes lit up. Very strong. If normal soldiers could block an attack from an Earth Spirit cultivator, even if it was just one attack, the battle strength of the army would increase by a large amount. This was a pity. If this kind of weapon was mass-produced earlier, they wouldn't have suffered so many losses in the war. But since the research had succeeded, would it be far from mass production? Chu Tian nodded in satisfaction. Our source energy equipment technology has already matured. Now it's time to create even higher-grade war weapons. Meng Qingwu knit her brows. Even higher-grade war weapons? Chu Tian said, the airships are too weak in the end. I feel like we have the ability to create even higher-grade energy devices. Moreover, we can use smart brains, radars, missiles, source energy cannons, energy shields, and etc. This kind of airship is the true overlord of the skies. The moment he said that, everyone was quite frightened. Smart brains, radars, missiles, source energy cannons, and even the newest energy shields, as well as a higher-grade energy structure than the airships. This kind of weapon made people's blood run cold just thinking about it. Perhaps just a few of them would be enough to conquer a small country. These individual technologies are maturing day by day. I don't think it will be a big problem. Meng Qingwu closed her eyes and thought for a bit before finally shaking her head and saying, but to develop this kind of complex war weapon, even with smart brains' help, it requires large amounts of people, large amounts of resources, and large amounts of money. I'm afraid Miracle Commerce doesn't have enough people to support this kind of project, and funds will be tight, so I don't think it's time yet. Chu Tian was a bit puzzled. We're taking in the gnomes, would we still lack talents? Although there are many gnome scholars, they haven't worked in Miracle Commerce before, so they don't understand our technology. They need time to adapt and learn. Not to mention that Miracle Commerce has too many research projects. Even if we have the gnome scholars, we still lack talents in some special fields. Resources and funds were also a problem. This was not something as simple as making an energy sword or an energy shield. Was he too impatient? Chu Tian was thinking about how to solve this problem when Vivian suddenly called him. She excitedly shouted, the source stones in the Eternal Forest have already been stored in the warehouse. My royal father and I are in Miracle City. Where are you? Quickly come. Elven King. Chu Tian fell into deep thought. Lancelot was a very open ruler. He was more determined to reform the elves than bringing the ancient Tree of Life back to the Eternal Forest. This was because this young elven king was very clear that if the Eternal Forest obtained the ancient Tree of Life, they would have to isolate themselves for a long time. Would the elves be able to sit back and relax with a single ancient Tree of Life? Impossible. The protection the ancient Tree of Life gave the elves would only make the elves more isolated from the world. This kind of isolation was very terrifying. The continent's spirit beasts and humans were developing like the sun in the sky, and the former overlords of the elves were gradually being marginalized. If they didn't change this situation, the elves would become a weak small race in 10,000 years. If the Elven King wanted to reform, Miracle City was the key. Then why didn't Miracle City use the Eternal Forest's resources? The elves had more high-level talents than the gnomes, and the resources the elves had could be counted on one hand. Chapter 498. The Source Stones have been loaded. Vivian personally counted the Source Stones several times to make sure there wasn't a single one missing before running to Chu Tian to report. I asked Big Brother to check. No need, no need. Vivian is one of us. Could she be unreliable? Vivian's heart felt warm as she happily said, of course, I'm a person of Miracle City in life and a ghost of Miracle City in death. I won't do anything bad to Miracle City. Big Brother Chutan, please trust me. The Elven King couldn't help giving a soft cough. Did this girl even forget what race she was? Miracle Bank's Source Stone reserves instantly increased by over 100,000. This was enough to cover the bad debts and make up for the losses from the war, stabilizing Miracle City's financial situation. Miracle City could boldly use this money. Chu Tian wasn't afraid of not being able to pay them back in a year. The Elven King's efficiency is higher than expected, so I won't hesitate. Ying, take out the smart brain. Meng Ying took out the smart brain and placed it in front of the Elven King. Your Majesty, this is the newest smart brain produced by Miracle Commerce. Its performance has been slightly increased and it can calculate 1,300,000,000 times per second. The smart body has been trained and can recognize orders and learn, but it still needs to be trained. If there are any problems in the future that need to be repaired, or if you need to increase its speed, our Miracle City will take care of it. There will be no after-sales fees. This transaction was clearly not worth it. 150,000 source stones in Miracle Bank would cost several tens of thousands of source stones a year, and using several tens of thousands of source stones to buy a smart brain was a loss no matter how one looked at it. This was because with Miracle Commerce's current manufacturing ability, with an intelligent factory, a smart brain would only cost several hundred source stones at most. This debt couldn't be calculated like this. The so-called rare things were precious. Other than Miracle City, the Eternal Forest was the first place to have a smart brain. It would be much easier to manage them in the future. The Elven King would have more time to do other things. It seemed like it was worth it. Anyways, there was no use piling up source stones in the Eternal Forest. Chu Tian then said, "I am a person who knows how to repay gratitude. The Elven King has helped Miracle City pass through a large problem, so Miracle City is filled with gratitude. There is a plan to deepen our cooperation with the Eternal Forest. I wonder if the elves are interested?" What was this guy up to? Your Majesty, the Elven King is very clear that Miracle Commerce has countless cutting-edge technologies, but it lacks enough resources and ability, so Miracle Commerce's expansion in the Forest of Chaos has been blocked. The Eternal Forest is the opposite. You have tens of thousands of years of accumulated resources and many large forest cities. You have a large influence in the Forest of Chaos, but you haven't used your resources to their full potential. The Elf King looked at him strangely. You want to? If the two clans join hands and help each other, wouldn't the situation change drastically? Chu Tian didn't like to beat around the bush. He went straight to the point and said, "Let's work together to develop the forest. I'll provide all kinds of technology, and you'll provide manpower and resources." For example, the Eternal Forest stored large amounts of spatial crystals, and there were many rare innate spatial energy users. They wouldn't be used in the Eternal Forest for 100 years, but they were incomparably precious resources for Miracle City. If the Elven King takes them out and we provide the spatial technology, we can build a large number of transport towers and space warehouses in the forest in a short period of time, creating considerable value. Wouldn't that be a win-win situation? There was a flash of light in the Elven King's eyes. It was like what Chu Tian said, this was a large win for both sides. The elves' wealth and resources were just hoarding, there was no way they could create any value. Although Miracle City had large amounts of products and technology, they were lacking in power and background, so it was impossible for them to develop in the forest in a short period of time. In this kind of situation, if both sides cooperated, how could they not advance by leaps and bounds? Vivian exclaimed, "That's a great idea. Royal Father, let's do it." The elves have many talents. Rather than wasting them, it's better to have them work for Miracle City. Chu Tian saw the Elven King's interest and immediately struck while the iron was hot. This way they can display their individual value and also bring benefits to the elves. Then what kind of people do you want? As long as they are knowledgeable and have genuine skills, such as proficient in the principles of array glyphs and medicine, they are all fine. In addition, special talents such as space attribute, spirit attribute, life attribute, the more the better. I want all of them. Your appetite is too big. There are many talents in the elves and most of them are famous people. If the council finds out and rejects this, I'm afraid this matter won't be easy to solve. Chu Tian shrugged. This will depend on the Elven King's methods. I believe that everything the Elven King does, it will shine for generations to come. As the most important reformer in the history of the elves, why do you care about these obstacles? A king should have the aggressiveness and boldness of a king. The Elven King gave a soft snort. It's easy for you to say. I saw the Elven King help me before, so I sincerely want to cooperate with the Eternal Forest. If the Elven King can't even make a decision on this kind of matter, I can only go to Dragon City to cooperate with the Dragon Lord. Chu Tian spread out his hands like he didn't care. The Dragon Lord's resources are not less than the Eternal Forests and the Dragon Lord definitely cannot resist making money. Big Brother Chutin, don't. Vivian scratched her head in worry. especially when she heard that Chu Tian was prepared to cooperate with the Black Dragon. She was very worried. We can't be tied down by those old men anymore. What are you worried for, girl? This brat's words were at most half believed. Cooperating with the Dragon Lord, only he could think of this. Cooperation needed strength to support it. Miracle City was so weak and wanted to negotiate with the Dragon's Ridge. How could they obtain fair treatment? Who didn't know about the Black Dragon's greed in the forest? Not to mention that Death Wing was eyeing Miracle City. Wasn't this asking a tiger for its skin? Miracle City chose to cooperate with the Eternal Forest, so they could only cooperate with the Eternal Forest. All right, you don't need to provoke me. The Elven King said to Chu Tian, let's talk about the plan first. The elves will take out their spatial crystals to build transport towers and will first build a transport network in the forest. Other than that, the elves will send as many innate spatial energy users into Miracle City. Vivian will lead the development of space warehouses and the logistics network. Other than that, the elves must support Miracle City's communication infrastructure and the surrounding elven cities. Logistics, people, and information. This was the foundation of all development. This isn't a problem. The Elven King nodded. How will the benefits from the transport towers and space warehouses be divided? Miracle Commerce will take 80%, the Eternal Forest will take 20%. Other than that, the elves can only use and receive dividends, they don't have the right to manage it. This is too harsh. The Elven King's expression changed, but he didn't get angry with his self-control. The Eternal Forest will only take 20% with their manpower and effort? Don't you feel that Miracle Commerce is earning a bit too much? Chu Tian revealed a sincere look. You have to understand that spatial crystals are very precious, but it isn't impossible to buy them with Miracle Commerce's material channels in the outside world. Other than providing the most important technology, Miracle Commerce will also provide the core material, the Eye of the Star, as well as the Smart Brains control system. These are all irreplaceable things. Don't forget that without the elves' support, Miracle Commerce will find it hard to develop in the Forest of Chaos. Without the Eternal Forest's support and permission, Miracle Commerce can't develop in the elves' territory, isn't that right? The Elven King said, 60-40. The elves have made enough concessions and I hope Miracle Commerce can show some expression. Chu Tian calmly shook his head. Your Majesty Elven King, in terms of our need for each other, the elves are more dependent on Miracle City. If there wasn't Miracle City's support, I don't know how long it would take for your reforms to be realized. As for Miracle Commerce? With the Trent's protection, at least we can control a region, so it doesn't matter if our development is slow. In the worst case, Miracle Commerce can give up on Miracle City. With our team and technology, where can't we go on the continent? So we have no reason to give in. The Elven King gave in again with a frown, 70-30. Chu Tian was still unmoved. Your Majesty Elven King should think about it again. This kind of profit sharing, is it really what the Eternal Forest and the elves need? Wrong, very wrong. After we cooperate, the elves will obtain the rights to use the transport tower and the space warehouse. You should understand that compared to the direct benefits of this technology, the added value and derivative value are the most precious. The so-called dividends referred to the future benefits of the transport tower and the space warehouse. The so-called rights to use the transport tower and the space warehouse to directly eat them. For example, the transport tower could transport 100 people a day, the elves had 20% of the rights and the elves could use it 20 times. As long as the procedures were completed, they could directly eat it without needing to report it. The rights to use the space warehouse were the same. It was like what Chu Tian said, to the elves, the transport tower and the space warehouse were not attractive. What was truly attractive was the development of the elven cities, breaking the elves' countless years of closed barriers in terms of people and materials. Chu Tian calculated that the Elven King couldn't refuse, so he gave this kind of harsh condition. Miracle City wouldn't let outsiders use too much of this technology. 20% was Chu Tian's bottom line. He couldn't increase it any further. The Elven King saw that he couldn't persuade this fellow no matter what, so he could only helplessly say with a sigh, "All right, I have a request. We must develop the Elven area first. When the Elven area is complete, We can use the extra resources to develop the surrounding areas. Other than that, we will build an elven small town on the edge of the Miracle Forest. I hope that Miracle City can give us some convenience. Finally, I hope that Miracle City can lift the ban on a few products in the Eternal Forest, like the source energy weapons and smart brains. No problem. The three powers were keeping a close eye on Miracle City. Other than the elven-controlled areas, it was hard to develop in other areas. They would first connect Miracle City to the elves, and it wouldn't be too late to expand after they had a certain amount of strength. The Elven King and Miracle City completed an agreement. Miracle City would add 10 transport towers and 50 space warehouses in the Forest of Chaos Elven area. Other than that, they would increase the signal coverage area by 30 times, adding 100 arenas, trial fields, shopping centers, and hotels. The main area would be controlled by the elves, and all the manpower and resources would be paid for by the elves. Miracle City would allow the Eternal Forest to develop an elven small town with 10,000 people in a small forest near the city. The small town would pay taxes to Miracle City, but it wouldn't be controlled by Miracle City's management. Other than that, Miracle City would open some uncommercialized products to the elves, including the source energy weapons, smart brains, and etc. Even if the Elven King didn't mention these things, Miracle Commerce would sell them in the future. After all, these things weren't a small amount of wealth. After the Elven King obtained several permits from Chu Tian, it was unknown what method he used to pass the meeting. The first batch of several thousand Eternal Forest elves quickly moved to the elven small town, including several hundred talents that Chu Tian wanted. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Miracle Commerce had a deep cooperation with the Eternal Forest. If they borrowed the elves' power to expand, Miracle Commerce's influence in the Forest of Chaos would become unprecedentedly strong. However, when Chu Tian was busy making conditions with the Eternal Forest, there was some urgent news coming from the Great Zhou country. Chapter 499. The Great Zhou country had previously sent news that Chen Bingyu, In Spirit, and Yoda's group had a conflict with the 5 spiritual mountains. Although the situation was very tense, they hadn't fought yet. Yoda had locked onto the Great Zhou royal family ruins at this time. Since he locked onto it, he would go find it. What was so strange about it? Actually, before heading to the ruins, Yoda felt a strong sense of danger. You know that the druid's prophetic ability is very special. Since he could feel danger, it meant that this trip was very dangerous. Therefore, Yoda was prepared. If he didn't return to the Heavenly Een Mountains in 3 days, the Black Moon sect would contact us for help. Then how many days have passed? We've lost contact for around 5 days. 5 days? What is going on? Meng Qingwu knit her brows and her expression became a bit serious as she said with a face of worry, "From the situation from that side, Yoda's group seemed to have just left the Heavenly Een Mountains when they were attacked and chased down. The Heavenly Een sect was surrounded by the 5 large sects, and this battle has lasted for several days. Our side is also in chaos, so the information has been delayed. Did something happen to them? I don't think so. They have transport scrolls and at least have the ability to escape, so they must have been trapped for some reason. But it is very strange. Yoda is a spirit transformation expert. There shouldn't be an expert that can suppress him in the Great Zhou country." Chu Tian thought about it for a few seconds. This matter is very strange. Have Nangong quickly gather some people. I want to personally take a look. Miracle City's matters had been very complicated recently. Not only did they have to monitor the 3 large powers, they also had to speed up their cooperation with the elves. However, they had to take a look at the Great Zhou country now, so Chu Tian could only leave everything to Meng Qingwu. It was a good thing Meng Qingwu handled matters quickly. There were more and more smart brains in the city, so there shouldn't be any problems. When Nangong Yun heard that there was a fight, she immediately called several dozen people over. These people were all experts in the 3rd true spirit layer or above, all peak experts in Miracle City. Chu Tian found the little fox that was stealing food in the garden, and they all teleported to the Great Zhou country without saying anything else. Endless Een saw Chu Tian's group arrive and he quickly excitedly came forward. "Why are you only here now?" The sect master had been missing for 5 whole days. Heavenly Een Mountain has already been besieged for 5 days. If this continues, we won't be able to hold on. I'm sorry. Chu Tian could only wave his hand. Miracle City also met a bit of trouble. Haven't they just calmed down?Een's spirit will be fine. Tell me the situation first. Chu Tian looked around and found that the Heavenly Een Mountain had changed quite a bit. There were holes in the surrounding mountains from the intense battle, and the main peak of the Heavenly Een Mountain also had many signs of battle. The buildings in front of the mountain gate had been completely destroyed, and the plaza was covered in cracks from the tremors, just like after an earthquake. There were some places where the marks were very fresh, with flames and ashes still floating in the air. Fuck, what's going on? Endless Een spoke of the matter with a depressed expression. After the Black Moon sect decided to support the rebuilding of the Great Zhou royal family, they were immediately opposed by the other sections. Of course, this is to be expected. Originally, the mysterious dark sect could have used their century-old relationship to pull 1 or 2 of the 5 biggest sects to be neutral or support us. In this way, they could have avoided a battle. Then how did it become like this? We don't know what happened. The stalemate wasn't bad, and your Miracle City's Prophet Yoda found the ruins. When they left the Heavenly Een Mountain to explore the ruins, there were no signs at all. Endless Yin's face was very ugly. The 5 great sects worked together to attack the Heavenly Een Mountain. If it wasn't for the Heavenly Een Mountain's sect protecting Array, perhaps this place would have been blown to pieces. Beaten to this state in just a few days? Nangong Yun had a look of disdain. What about the 10,000-year-old sect protecting Array of your Heavenly Een Mountain? Is that thing made of paper? Don't speak nonsense. Endless Een and the Black Moon sect's elders were filled with anger. Damn, if it wasn't for you people, how could the Heavenly Een Mountain offend the other 5 spiritual mountains at the same time? If it wasn't to help some bullshit Great Zhou royal family restore their country, the Black Moon sect wouldn't have to fight so many people. Endless Een explained with a calm face. In these few battles, we found a very strange phenomenon. The 5 great sects have large amounts of tamed demon beasts helping them fight. This kind of fighting style is very rare in the Great Zhou country, and most of the demon beasts they use aren't from the Great Zhou country. Other than that, there are many mysterious experts among them. What experts? We can't be sure. The only thing we can be sure of is that we've never seen these experts before, because whether it is their fighting style or techniques, they aren't like Great Zhou people. There were many experts in the 6 famous mountains of the Great Zhou country, and these experts understood each other very well. Even if they hadn't fought before, they would at least understand each other's styles and could recognize each other when they had a chance to interact. However, these mysterious people's styles were different from the Great Zhou countries. They definitely weren't normal Great Zhou experts. Endless Yin's face became uglier and uglier. The previous wave of attacks has just ended. If my guesses aren't wrong, they will soon launch a new wave of attacks. There's this kind of thing? Chu Tian patted the little white fox on his shoulder. Fox, go take a look at them. The fox opened its divine eye and looked at the cultivator camps around the Heavenly Een Mountains. There were around 400,000-500,000 of them, and they were all elites from large sections. When the fox looked at the center, it suddenly discovered something. It suddenly raised its head and waved its claws like a hungry wolf, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. What? You're talking about spirit beasts? The little fox nodded its head. Nangong Yun said in a surprised voice, "Isn't the Great Zhou country a human kingdom? I've never heard of spirit beasts appearing in the mirror before." It's not strange. The Great Zhou country borders the Eagle Burial Kingdom to the north, the Warhounds Plains to the northwest, and the Forest of Chaos to the south. Spirit beasts can come from these places, so it's not strange for spirit beasts to appear in the Great Zhou country. But Chu Tian narrowed his eyes and said, "These spirit beasts aren't natives of the forest and aren't remnants of the Warhounds Plains." Nangong Yun blurted out, "They're people from the Eagle Burial Kingdom." Chu Tian nodded, "Most likely. I never thought that the Eagle Burial Kingdom's tentacles would stretch even further than we imagined. If the Eagle Burial Kingdom's influence is involved, the Great Zhou country's situation will become even more complicated. What do we do now?" What can we do now? We'll talk after we take care of the people at the bottom of the mountain. Endless Een saw that when Chu Tian said this, it was as easy as drinking a cup of water in front of him. He couldn't help revealing a look of disbelief. Are you crazy? These are the elites of the 5 great sects. It is already hard for us to defend against them, not to mention taking care of them. What are you shouting about? Nangong Yun seemed to be even angrier than when she was questioned. If boss says it's fine, then it's fine. Shut your fucking mouth, otherwise don't blame this old lady for beating you until you're half paralyzed. With Nangong Yun's fiery temper, she wouldn't hesitate to fight. Endless Een could also feel that this fiery red-haired woman was a bit stronger than Qin Bingyu. With Endless Yin's strength, he definitely wasn't her match, not to mention that Nangong Yun brought several dozen subordinates who were all experts of miracle commerce. He had to lower his head under the eaves. Boss, how do you think we should take care of them? These people have an overwhelming advantage over the heavenly Een mountain, so they are a bit lax. Almost all of their people are stationed in the same valley. Nangong, tell Yinging to send some things over, we'll need them soon. 2 hours later, Chu Tian took out 5 sets of source energy weapons from the space warehouse. When they were put together, they were actually 5 missile launchers. Miracle Commerce had missile weapons a long time ago, but they were very low grade before, but the situation was different now. Boss, the control panel is ready. Nangong Yun stood in front of a temporary platform with giant black boxes around her. This was clearly a super source energy matrix, and the control panel itself was a miniature undead tower. Open Smart Brain and the control panel. All right. Smart Brain was awakened and immediately said, "Hello, Sir City Lord. I am Smart Brain number 3 and my main ability is to manage the weapon system. What can I do for you?" Chu Tian pointed at the densely packed life signs on the radar. Use the Snake Scorpion missile and kill these fellows. Understood, Sir City Lord. Distance 56. 3,121 kilometers, currently simulating the best trajectory. Finished. Launch the Snake Scorpion Creature Poison Missile. The 5 missile launchers began to adjust their direction and paused for 3-4 seconds. Suddenly, all the missile launchers shook, and each launcher shot out 5 to 6 slender missiles. These missiles came from Great Summer Qing State. Great Summer Qing State's Green Ridge was ravaged by snake scorpion beasts all year round. Chu Tian and Qin Bingyu had almost suffered a large loss, but Miracle Commerce found that the snake scorpion beast poison was an extremely strong paralyzing poison. It could spread over a large area in a short period of time, paralyzing soldiers to death. Therefore, researchers collected large amounts of the snake scorpion beast poison. They first added several strong paralysis toxins to the snake scorpion beast's poison before refining it into a highly concentrated liquid. Finally, it was compressed into a missile, creating this era's biological weapon. This kind of weapon was cheap to make and was relatively simple. The only flaw was that it was easy to accidentally injure people because the snake scorpion missile's compressed poison was very volatile. As long as a missile exploded in a group of people, it would instantly cover over 1,000 meters, poisoning everyone. Before the Smart Brain's control launch pad was researched, there was no possibility of this type of weapon being used in practice. Today could be considered the first test. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.